Hello, good evening, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the season finale of Season 13 of the Just Two Idiots Championship Series, as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. That's right, after an incredible 5 rounds of racing action, we've arrived at our 6th and final round of the season, and as our MX-5 Cup cars make their way out to the tarmac today, we've still got 2 championships very much up for grabs. Whether it be the Drivers' Championship or the Teams' Championship, we have had a story of a season, and well, we're going to be bringing all the chapters to a conclusion today here in the US of A at Daytona International Speedway. The home of world motorsport, many would proclaim it to be, and I would agree with them. This is a circuit like no other when it marries together the wide extent of its oval and also an incredible infield packed of hairpins. 3.56 miles in length, it's no wonder why it's the annual host of the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona, but it also plays annual host of so many other series, and as our drivers get ready to take on its tarmac and confidence today, they'll find themselves faced with a conundrum. Do you go all in the infield at the hairpins to try and take the lead and run away, or do you play it patient and strategically on the oval banking and try to bump, draft and slipstream your way to success? Well, somebody's got to be successful at the very end of it, somebody's got to be our winner of the race, and somebody's got to win our championships. But will it be smarts, will it be brawn, or will it be a combination of two that is going to see a new dawn and perhaps a new champion crown? Well, that's what we're here to find out as we bring you all the race in action as if it were live. And this post-round broadcast from Circuit Side. Indeed, you're tuning in today, catch up with all the racing action from Wednesday, the 22nd of July, 2026, and we're bringing it to you as if it were live this Thursday, the 23rd of July. That means here in the content booth, we do not know how all the racing unfolds. Started, of course, with the qualifying session that's coming up, and then the most importantly, going into one and only race for today. More on that very shortly, whilst we've only got one race when it should be 2, but this broadcast available on YouTube.com. Just go and simply search for what will be Porsche Productions or PWP, and you can be tuning in there. In the content booth, you have myself. My name is Paul Bushell, initiated, and as we make our way into this season finale, our schedule is thus: times in Eastern Daylight Time (EDT) or Universal Coordinate Time -4 (UTC -4). As we can see, and approximately what will be around about 5 to 6 minutes time, our drivers will be making their way slowly into the pit lane and then making their way back out to the circuit for what will be the qualifying session. 20 minutes in duration, due to get underway at 10:10 this evening, after which they'll be making their way back into pit lane. They'll have a brief warm-up period, and then they'll be making their way out for their final race of the season. Now, normally, with any round, what there's been a crown jewel round as well, where it's a special, where we have a 60-minute feature race instead of our standard 40 minutes, it would be preceded by a 20-minute sprint race. However, there has been a bit of an administrative error that has occurred as we've made our way to Daytona today, and whereas we would have normally had our 20-minute sprint race, unfortunately, that race has had to be cancelled, and therefore it means we've only got one race on schedule today, and that is our 60-minute crown jewel race. So an extra 20 minutes compared to our regular feature races, or some would say what we've done really is added together both our sprint and feature race. Not that we plan to do it that way, but that's the way we're going to roll with it, and therefore it's an hour's showdown here at Daytona to crown our champions and the Drivers and Teams Championship, and all that and more in terms of the regulations and how they changed the crown jewel race we'll bring you up to speed with shortly. In fact, further ado, as we make our way into this round then, well, what better way to set up the scene here at Daytona than bring up to speed with the calendar, the circuit we're racing at, and then those rules and regulations, and also the championship standings after 5 rounds of 6. So let's get to it. And as we can see, taking a look back at our calendar, we have made our way around the globe. It's crazy to think we started all the way back on the 10th of June. That was at the Alton Park Circuit, the international lap without the Britain chicane. And then we saw some incredible battles, no doubt about it, at the very narrow and nimble course. Then we made our way to Japan for a double header, beginning with the Tsukuba Circuit on the 17th of June. And then we got to see a highly technical circuit all about track position. It really was elbows out racing for those who wanted to make moves. But then we made our way to neighbouring Okayama International Circuit, and there we saw a very completely different complexion. Well, the rain fell, and it meant that on the 24th of June, it was just as much about conquering the choice of tyres as it was about managing those pools of water, particularly on those curves, and also being the quickest out on the tarmac. Then we had a mid-season break week in respect, of course, of Independence Day and the 250th anniversary of the independence of the US of A. And then, aptly, we've made our way back to the United States of America for what has been an American triple header to complete the season. Beginning, of course, in round number 4 on the 8th of July at the Chicago Street Circuit, and what around that was some incredible battling action in the streets of the Illinois State Circuit. And then we made our way last time out to the Virginia International Raceway, or VIR, and what exactly went down at the circuit on the 15th of July. In terms of the big stories, in qualifying there was quite a story there, as the fact we had 11 drivers make the way to the circuit, and it was another round of boiling hot track temperatures, albeit the circuit was less aggressive on tyre wear given we were running the North course, and it meant that in qualifying all drivers are able to keep putting in the laps to the point whereby it all came down to the final lap. And Dickinson would make it back-to-back pole positions by 1200s. Head of Knotavin and Pancakes would take a season best qualifying performance, rounding out the top three, only a further 600s behind. Then there was a notable gap of 2 attempts to fourth place starter Cat Daddy, impressing once again in qualifying as he has done earlier on in the season, and a further 2 tenths behind him would be Beaver, who completed the top 5, although some drivers seemed to be a bit uncomfortable in qualifying, including Bobnova, who only managed the 6th place. Quite a poor qualifying performance from him given his relative previous form, and SimplySteve meanwhile could not qualify because he had a qualifying ban after his race 1 lap 1 incident on the streets of Chicago. But it wasn't about qualifying where all the excitement would be. That was just an appetizer, because when we went into race number 1, well, the start of the race was relatively calm, despite the fact that Pancake seemed to struggle for any pace whatsoever, dropping from 3rd to 7th very rapidly, and that's where he would finish. Conversely, Beaver would gradually climb his way from 5th to 2nd and found himself in a race-long freeway battle for the win with Knotavin and Dickinson, whereas niCKaLaToR, Bobnova and SimplySteve enjoyed their own freeway battle for 4th place, and niCKaLaToR would take that 4th place by half a second ahead of Bobnova, as SimplySteve could latch himself onto the back of the pair, but he could never truly get involved. Now, there was also a huge error for Gabay midway through the race that spoiled his chance of a top 5 finish and sent him to the back of the field, but right at the front of the field, your winner of the race 1 VIR was none other than Beaver, who took 5th place in qualifying, the best part of almost 6 tenths off of Dickinson's pole time, but by the end of lap number 3 was up in the 2nd place and already pressuring Knotavin for the win. He took the lead on lap number 9, turn 1 off to set up the move over several laps, and then he defended hard, forcing Knotavin to have to fight with Dickinson, and took his 3rd win on the season by 2400ths of a second. Dickinson, meanwhile, he was able to find his way past Knotavin in the late stage of the race, despite taking pole position and being relegated back down to 3rd place by the end of lap number 3, but he went on a bit of a resurgent charge and managed to battle his way past Knotavin on the penultimate lap, and he would find his way to 2nd place only by 800ths of a second, despite an absolute flurry of attacking moves on the final lap by Knotavin, and it would be Knotavin who would settle for the final spot at the podium. But the championship leader, to be fair to him, only need to be on the podium to set himself up very nicely for not just race number 2, but also to maintain his championship momentum. And so in race number 2 at VIR, well, much like race number 1, it was a race that gradually built up to a bit of a crescendo, whereby we got to see plenty of fighting in the early stages, but the fighting got fiercer as the race went on over the 40 minutes, and tyre management also was critical, but we also had some dramatic moments. Now, the open lap saw niCKaLaToR and Bobnova fall down the order from 5th and 4th respectively on the starting grid, and they had to go on some extended recovery drives, with niCKaLaToR doing so to 4th place, whereas late instant for Bobnova saw his run end with a 7th place finish. Bobnova's instance sadly included SimplySteve and Dickinson, who had already had a huge spin whilst battling for the podium on lap number 5, and this forced what was Dickinson to retire from the race, as it also saw Bobnova's run end in dismay. Now, Gabay's misery as well from race number 1 continued, as he retired on lap 11 due to an issue with his car. But whilst it was misery for some, it was joy for others, because excitement rose at the midway point, with SimplySteve's control of the lead being initially prized loose by Beaver, and his error on lap 15 would force him down to 6th place, albeit he would then recover to 3rd. And as a result, the race became a two-way fight for the win between Beaver and Knotavin, which went the full distance, and as SimplySteve and niCKaLaToR crucially battled behind for the final spot on the podium, 3rd place that being, of course, well, the closely tailing Cat Daddy, could this say that rapidly multiple times in succession, I dare you, well, he wouldn't quite be able to get involved truly, but he would take P5 not too far behind. And then we did see a not too distant Pancakes in 6th place, who started to find pace towards the end of the race. But who won the race is perhaps the big question, when then it was Beaver who would start 8th and come through to make it back-to-back wins, and he was absolutely unstoppable. His first double in a round for the season, and Beaver definitely coming into today with all the momentum on his side. Knotavin, meanwhile, would take the run-up spot in the end and went on attack in the final 7 minutes of the race, taking the lead briefly before losing it to Beaver, and he could not find his way past Beaver a second time despite everything he would throw at the race winner. As for SimplySteve, well, it was a 3rd place, and started in 3rd, fell down the order and recovered his way back up. He really was like a phoenix from the ashes in terms of his achievements at the VIR circuit, and for SimplySteve, a well-deserved final podium. So that was the big story of VIR in terms of our 2 races, and all the headlines coming out out of it. And well, without further ado, ladies and gents, we now make our way to Daytona, of course. So let's tell you a little bit about our host circuit for today. It is the road course, this circuit. Of course, this circuit has a road course. It also does have a rallycross circuit, and it has its infamous oval used for NASCAR on an annual basis. Located within the city limits of Daytona Beach in the Volusia County of the US state of Florida. Huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track maps contained within it. The best part of what is there, 12 corners when you include the oval banking of 3.56 miles, and as our drivers make the round around over turn 1, they'll find themselves very quickly having to come sharply on the brakes into the sweeping left-hander at turn 1, which is all about making sure you nail your apex as best as humanly possible. Going through that left-hander, then our drivers will make the way through the quick chicane at turns 2 and 3, a quick right into left flick, before then coming in towards the first of 2 hairpins in the infield, the horseshoe hairpin at turn number 4. There, coming out to low speed bend, it'll be a charge up towards the second of the hairpins at turn number 6, but not without the fast kink of what will be turn number 5, while drivers will need to make sure they don't overspeed through the corner, because otherwise oversteer or understeer could catch them out. But if they get it right, they'll then need to get on the brakes absolutely nailing tight to come through the second hairpin at turn number 6. Then it'll be into the sharp left-hander, the 90-degree left-hander at turn number 7, to take them back off onto the oval banking. As the drivers make the way all the way round, they'll then come into the infamous bus stop chicane, now known as Le Mans chicane, but it's going to be a long day before we start to refer to it as Le Mans chicane, I can tell you that, as the drivers will make the way from left-right into right-left through turns 9, 10 and 11, and they'll roar the way out onto the final part of the oval banking and towards the finish line or to another lap. But you can definitely see how this is going to be a lot about bump drafting and slipstream, as it is going to be about being brave on the brakes in the infield, and that's where the intrigue lies. But as for our rules and regulations for tonight, well, car setup-wise, we have a slight change. Now, this is an open setup championship, we should remind you, using the global Mazda MX-5 Cup car. Season 13 dedicated to the MX-5 Cup car, one of the staples of club, national and international level racing. Fuel loads, however, we have introduced a restriction of 53% to the fuel tank for the purposes of this season finale, and that is going to add a bit more of a strategic element, of course, in what will be our crown jewel race. Over the 60 minutes, you can expect that our drivers are most likely to keep an eye on those fuel gauges, and we may see some refueling pit stops. Now, qualifying, as per usual, is an open format, which means all drivers are out of the circuit together, and they have 6 flying laps available, plus their out lap, so expect a lot of work to be put in when it comes to the likes of slipstream of one another, and particularly teammates are likely to work together. Now, as for the crown jewel round races, well, given the fact that we do not have our sprint race day, we only have our crown jewel race, our 60-minute feature. Well, the races, regardless, will commence via a double-foul rolling start as a tradition of MX-5 Cup racing, and particularly in the Just2Idiots Championship Series. And the crown jewel race grid normally would be set based on the results of the sprint race, with the top 8 finishing positions inverted. Now, given the fact we only have that race day, we are presuming, until we're informed otherwise, that we will be seeing the grid line up as they qualify instead. How that has not been confirmed, so I have to wait and see what happens there. Whether it is decided, despite the fact we haven't got a sprint race, would essentially at that point take the qualifying results and invert them through the top 8. And that would mean the pole sitter from qualifying would start in 8th place for the purposes of the crown jewel race, and we continue that inversion down to the 8th place qualifier, and they would start on pole for the purposes of the crown jewel race, and then the rest of the qualifiers from 9th downwards will line up exactly as they've qualified. So we'll wait and see. We'll keep our eyes on that because we're not 100% certain. Now, there are no mandatory pit stop requirements in the races, so therefore if our drivers think they can go over the whole race distance for a single fuel tank and a single set of tyres, they're more than welcome to do so, although I get the feeling that 53% fuel tank limitation is going to force a fuel pit stop at some point. Each driver has 2 fast pairs available should they need to use them, and a driver should receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 15 or more instant points, and further drive-through penalties every subsequent 8 instant points should they be notched. But without further ado, ladies and gents, we make our way back to circuit side, and as we do, well, let's bring you up to speed with the standings coming into this season finale, and here they are, starting with the overall Drivers' Championship. And as we can see, Knotavin is the man who leads the way coming into this season finale. And we'll give him the fact that only points will be available for the Crown Jewel race, and it would be a maximum haul of points available. As I do my quick double check here with regards to points, well, he would have 53 if he took the win, plus 2 for the Crown Jewel pole position, and 2 for the fastest lap. There's a maximum of 57 points up for grabs for our drivers today, a few more points. But given the fact that he is leading, and this includes a drop score, what you see on screen, but he is effectively on 210 points right now versus the next highest driver of 171 for niCKaLaToR, who sits in third because of drop scores. It does mean for Knotavin, all he needs to do is achieve a slender haul of points, and he will be your Season 13 champion. He will successfully defend his Season 12 crown, going from LMP2s to MX-5s, and it seems though no matter what type of car you throw at Knotavin, he's going to be king of it or very close to the front. But the iRacing driver will not relax, I can tell you that. He'll be going for pole position, he'll be going for the win. And he wants to try and end the season on the ultimate high. Bobnova splits Knotavin and niCKaLaToR based on the drop scores, with the team What Team driver holding a steady second place at 146 points. And knowing that right now this is a gold opportunity for him to potentially seal the runner-up spot, if not take the championship crown. And perhaps that is the bigger theme or concern of today. Who is going to be the runner-up? Because you can see there, Bobnova on 146 points. 3 behind him, niCKaLaToR for Bobnova Motorsport. There's 130 for Beaver. It's 129 for SimplySteve. And it's 128 for Dickinson. It is so tight right now. Grand total of 18 points separates second through to sixth, and it is anybody's game with the drop scores being applied as to who will be the runner-up. Indeed, who will complete the top 3 of the championship, whereas Knotavin seems to be stapled to the top. Let's not be unfair, though, because Cat Daddy and Pancakes are only separated by a single point, and they are both here today. There was a bit of a worry that Cat Daddy may have not been able to make this round, but thankfully, due to personal circumstances being altered at last possible minute, he is able to make the season finale. So expect a rivalry between the plain race cars and SimCity racing drivers. And then we do have Garlic Dog, the teammates Cat Daddy, they're sitting in 9th on 94 points, but the absence of Dust in this round, it does mean he seems to be set for 9th place, unless we do see a sudden changeover whereby he might be able to creep his way into 8th or 7th. Then we do have, outside the top 10, Corn Dog by 10 points. He's 11 ahead of Geng, and behind the orbicular driver, it's Biker Pilot for 3.8 Racing, and the two prizes are Paperbag and AJ, who complete your top 15, and both the drivers there, in fact, all 3 drivers on 69 points, looking nice, no doubt about it. It's a further 14 points back to Urko for Bobnova Motorsport, back on the grid once again, and we look forward to seeing him potentially try to creep his way into the top 15 before the season is over. And then we have Yomega, Captain CK, Mark Darnell, and Gabay completing your top 22. Gabay back once again and hoping for a happier day today in the Floridian sun. Well, I'd say the Floridian sun, there's not much of it there. But meanwhile, behind them, outside the top 20, it's 21st photography ahead of Tagish, and on 0 points, it's Sneezy Jr. But then we come to your team's championship standings, and here we can see, after a grand total of 5 rounds of racing, no drop scores in the team's championship, unlike the drivers' championship. Speed Squad lead the way on 247 points, 12 ahead of SimCity Racing, and we'll get in the fact it was only SimplySteve on the grid last time out. Is a major solo effort from him that has kept the team alive at the top. But SimCity Racing, well, both of their drivers are here today, only where SimplySteve is here for Speed Squad, and therefore, can SimplySteve pull out another Herculean effort, or will we see SimCity Racing steal the crowd away? Could Bobnova Motorsport theoretically take it away as well, because they're still in the hunt? They are only the best part of 9 points behind it. It's a single points playing race cars, and a further 15 to the solo effort of niCKaLaToR's Knotavin. And right now, we have a 5-way fight on our hands for the team's championship crown, as much as we do, in theory, have a 3-way fight on our hands for the drivers' championship, but perhaps more a 5-way fight for the run-up spot in the drivers' championship. So there's plenty of intrigue, plenty of story that will unfold here today, ladies and gentlemen. We could not have a season finale better set up. But let's not forget about the fact that Team What Team sit in 6th. They are the best part of 31 points ahead of 3.8 Racing. Next, Badmouth SimSpots and Ubiqular, who complete the stands jointly on 93 points. And will we see either team move ahead of the other before the season is over? But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, that's a recap of the standings, and we go straight into qualified, because it is time to get this season finale underway. And as qualifying time begins to tick away, 20 minutes is go, go, go. But who will be going to the top and who will find themselves qualified a bit further down the order, we will find out very shortly as the drivers all make the way out. Now, of course, this being a qualifying session at Daytona, how important is qualifying in reality? In theory, it's not that important. The main theme is you want to try and get pole position because you get 2 points. This is a crown jewel round, and therefore pole position is worth double what it would normally be based on rules and regulations. Where it'd be worth a single point, but we double it to 2. Indeed, the crown jewel's always worth a bit more, as they say. But as we do see Bobnova make his way around, well, right now, will it be a day where he puts a jewel on top of his proverbial crown in this championship charge, or will we see something different there from other drivers? SimplySteve, of course, make his way along, and this is going to feel a little bit strange to him, given the fact, of course, he missed qualifying at VIR due to a qualifying ban, but he is now back in qualifying once again. There are no penalties for our drivers here today. We did have a relatively clean day of racing at VIR. There was one incident which did see a driver have time added to their race, but no places got changed as a result. No points were taken away or handed to another driver. So therefore, everyone really coming in with a clean slate into this season finale, and that's exactly what we love to see. And the racing standards has been incredible this season, no doubt about it. How well everyone has raced each other in the MX-5 Cup car, and you may be sat there thinking, well, of course they'll be very clean, because MX-5 Cup cars is only 181 brake horsepower. They're very narrow machines as well. It's not as though things could go very wrong. Well, we would beg to differ. Mistakes can happen in MX-5 Cup cars as much as they can in much faster cars, such as LMP2s and such. As we see AJ there giving niCKaLaToR a bit of a push, and niCKaLaToR deciding he didn't want to be pushed and just letting the car roll on. So I wonder if niCKaLaTOR's waiting for a friend right now, waiting for a slipstream taxi, essentially, as he just casually makes his way around. But we'll have to wait to see what's to be for him as he starts to get a bit of tyre temperature. But coming back to the theme of the importance of qualifying then, beyond the fact there's 2 points up for grabs. The reason why it's not important is because of the fact we are expecting the racing to be very draft orientated. If you are a regular viewer of the IMSA Sports Car Championship in real life, you'll know that the Global Mazda MX-5 Cup does support what is the IMSA Sports Car Championship, and well, at Daytona this year we had an absolute epic of a race, and well, in their races you will see slipstream be king and the key theme, where you'll see packs of MX-5s all grouped together, and we will expect the same here, whereby if you qualify towards the back of the field, by the end of that one, you could be at the very front of the field just by simply working together with other drivers. And bump draft is a big theme. And for those of you sat there right now thinking, well, what is bump drafting? Lay it on me and explain it simply. Well, the idea is simply you are slipstreaming, you are in the draft of a car in front of you, and as you get closer and closer to that car on the oval banking or on a straight, you wouldn't do this in a corner because how dangerous it is in a corner. You would essentially, rather than go to overtake the car in front of you, you would gently come up behind the car in front of you and tap it on the rear bumper. That's what we call bumping, and with the draft that's pushing you towards that car, that's why we get the term bump draft. And the whole idea is you are implanting a little bit of your speed from the slipstream to the car that is pulling you along, so they go a little bit quicker on the straight, and in turn you go quicker behind them, and that's where bump drafting comes through. Something, a prominent part of NASCAR racing, of course, but it does apply to any racing which is draft orientated when you have a long enough straight, alternatively, of course, a long enough oval section. And the Daytona International Speedway circuit, a very unique circuit for several reasons. Firstly, it's road course, literally using the best part of 85% of the oval and then fitting in the infield hairpin section, plus also having the bus stop chicane. But add to that as well, and this is perhaps a lesser known about Daytona, when we do see 24-hour racing, although we're not going to be racing in night time here as far as I'm aware, although to be fair, the light conditions are quite low at the moment, so you never know, we may see the floodlights come on. When we do have 24 hours of racing at Daytona in sports cars, so in GT3s, LMP2s, and also in what would be GTP prototypes, what ends up happening is the floodlight system actually has to be turned down to 25% of its output to simulate nighttime conditions, whereas if you watch NASCAR racing here, you'll know that the floodlights are on a much stronger setting, and in a way it almost replicates daytime of how strong those floodlights are. Something I didn't know until a couple of years ago. They have to actually artificially turn down the floodlights at Daytona to be able to create a nighttime setting as part of the rules and regulations for endurance racing, which is nighttime has an actual definition, the amount of ambient luminance, and Daytona and several other circuits around the globe that do have very strong floodlight systems actually have to turn their settings down with those floodlights to make sure that drivers are effectively racing in nighttime. And it's why if you've ever watched a Formula 1 broadcast, for example, when they have made the way to the streets of Shanghai, if my memory serves me correctly, you'll notice with the sheer volume of street light in there, and also some other circuits around the globe, it actually looks as though you're seeing the cars better than you would in daytime, and that's not the TV, that's not magic on TV that's enabling that. That is because of how strong the floodlight systems are, and it is by design to help the drivers be able to see the circuit as they would during daytime. But we digress. We go away from what's happening on circuit right now, and as the first qualifying laps have started to come in, and well, Dickinson is setting the benchmark there for SimCity Racing with his teammate of Pancakes right behind. And as they make the way on through, which Dickinson right now on a 2:11.601. And more definitely impressive lap there. SimplySteve a little bit further back, splitting the pair. And understanding right now, 1.1 seconds behind. But something tells me that Dickinson and Pancakes are going to do a bit of a to-me-to-you job on this qualifying session, whereby now Pancakes is the one who's being pulled around the circuit as AJ gets his first benchmark on the board. And the whole game plan here will be essentially for the SimCity Racing Team, or SCR as they abbreviated to on the side of the car, is that one driver get the toe on one lap and then immediately get ahead of the other, and they'll continue to swap back and forth until the end of the session. Theoretically, both will get 3 laps in the draft of their teammate. Understandably, the driver who does the very last lap will have the lightest car, most likely, if they have decided to fuel the cars for all 6 laps plus the outlap, and also have the most rubbered in circuit. But as Pancakes falls back a little bit there, well, the slipstream zone of these MX-5 cars becomes very strong within a second, but it extends all the way out to 2 seconds. So you do pick up that gradual build-up. But suddenly it goes from being a very gentle amount of tow to an exponentially strong amount of draft once you get within a second, and by the time you're down to 0.3 of a second, you're essentially gaining the best part of 3 to 4 miles an hour, if not more, on the straight. And well, that is a huge boost in these cars with their 2-litre 4-cylinder 181 brake horsepower Sky Active G engines. But as we do see Pancake slide his way into a chicane that's been reprofiled several times over the last decade. Indeed, the curves have been rearranged. I do feel for the iRacing developers, the number of times they've had to modify the curves on an annual basis, if not on a 6-monthly basis, given the fact they've gone from very raised curves with jagged teeth to much flatter curves and back and forth. Well, indeed, they do try to replicate it as best as possible on the premier sim racing platform available around the world. But as more times come in, Bobnova there working with SimplySteve, they swap around, and meanwhile you have to get some times on the board from a few of our drivers. Gabay, unfortunately, no time set yet, and still in the pit lane actually, so I wonder if Gabay might be able to miss this qualifying session. I hope that's not a sign of a technical issue with the car, because we don't want Gabay out of this one. We want to see him out of the circuit. We want to see them all out there, to be fair. Indeed, I think we'd be with a bit of despair if we don't see Gabay's 22. But meanwhile, Knotavin yet to get a lap of the board, but now sitting in behind one of the playing race cars drivers there, and the driver in front of him, I do believe, is going to be none other than Cat Daddy, giving a bit of a tour around, or a bit of a slipstream pull around, and one of the time will be grateful for that. But is he a bit too close too soon, perhaps, given the fact he is within the best part of 4 attempts there, as they make their way in towards the leaning curve for turn number 5, and as they come through this corner and catch out a lot of drivers, it's not an easy corner, turn 5, and right into this hairpin. Well, Knotavin might be backing off the throttle a little bit coming into the hairpin, perhaps do a bit of lift and coast just to give some space. That will naturally cost him about a 1/10 or 2 of lap time, but his thought process will be that he will gain more on the oval banking in the draft than he loses in the hairpin. But the perfect lap is you don't have to worry about backing off. Essentially, you can go full attack behind a car that's pulling you around. And well, right now, not too long left in this qualifying session when you consider we're already 8 minutes in, 12 minutes to go, and well, a few other drivers have already delivered the best part of what is 2 to 3 laps. Here's a long lap around here, spanning just over 2 minutes. So you do the mathematics, out lap plus the flying laps. You are looking at about 15 minutes of the qualifying session being used up if you do it all in one go. And here comes Knotavin going to the racing line there. And what will Cat Daddy do at this point? He'll back off into the chicane and he'll tuck back in behind there. So Knotavins picked up the toe as best he can, but Cat Daddy decides he can't give any more. And well, understeers a bit wide there going into the chicane. That's going to be a bit of a clumsy line, but he's able to get that back together there. Nicely styled out by our number 69 driver. Now, we should also say that this round has been given the sponsorship title of DC's 44 Ever Never Washed at Daytona. And, well, that is definitely what is a bit of a crazy title. And a big thank you to our sponsor for this round, and that is J2ICS. Not racing for this season, also known as Trey, but to be fair, absolutely brilliant part of the Just 2 Idiots Championship community, of the J2ICS. And I haven't quite had the fully confirmed backstory from J2ICS as to why he's given it this name, but based on what has been the dialogue between a few drivers in relation to the name in the official Discord, well, what I've been able to find out is that essentially this is a reference to Lewis Hamilton. And, well, many of our drivers saying that it's J2ICS being unable to accept that Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time Formula 1 champion, hoping one day to take his 8th to surpass the record of the great Michael Schumacher, or the Michael, as Mika Hakkinen would refer to him, in the, what was the late 90s. Well, this is a reference to the fact that J2ICS is a Lewis Hamilton fan, and well, whilst many would say that Lewis Hamilton is washed, or that he's well beyond his prime, well, J2ICS does not have to accept what he says is not true in his own words. Meanwhile, many would argue that the only reason Lewis Hamilton is doing well, at least in this community, by the way, and I'm not getting involved, I'm not giving an opinion on the British racing driver, to be fair. I don't want to get involved in all the debate. I don't want anyone putting any pitchforks at work on Two Booth Door. Well, they've been saying that the only reason Lewis Hamilton has been doing well in the current era of Formula 1 cars is because they are slower through the turns and easier on the older gentleman's abilities, given the fact that Lewis Hamilton is pushing into his 40s now, and indeed, or pushing towards his 40s. His age I haven't quite got available to me. Indeed, not quite as old as Fernando Alonso. I think it's going to be on the grid until the end of time, until the heat decay of the universe at this rate. And what we're talking about, the fact that Lewis Hamilton lost out in 2 of 3 seasons versus George Russell, who in turn is, of course, being beaten by Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes currently. But, of course, there's been a bit of back and forth. We've also had some words said from other drivers in the community saying that Hamilton is the greatest of all time, or at least in the current generation. And, or indeed, that's where we have got the nickname for this round, or this Grand Prix, as DC's 44 Ever Never Washed at Daytona. And, well, huge thank you to Trade Stop for the sponsorship. And indeed, we have some absolutely brilliant names for this round, no doubt about it. Indeed, all of our rounds for this season. And indeed, I get the feeling that we're going to see even more of those in Season 14. More on those to come, of course. And more about that at the end of today's broadcast. But as Bobnova makes his way across the timeline, SimplySteve still following him on through. Well, we owe you an on-board lap with one of our drivers, ladies and gentlemen, as we now started to get towards the more detailed end of what is this qualifying session. And, well, as we do, some more times coming in. Knotavin jumping ahead of GarlicDog to 2:13.505, but definitely I think finding here that the pair are not quite able to make this work out as much as they would like to, as they do swap back. But right now, Knotavin, unfortunately, where the chips have laid, and he's all over the back of GarlicDog there, like about, well, not GarlicDog, that's Cat Daddy's on the back of. My apologies there. It's an identical livery car. Just got to make sure I get the door numbers right and the tracking numbers on the cars right as well. And, well, as GarlicDog there is a bit distant, well, Cat Daddy right now definitely find Knotavin is putting some pressure on him, perhaps. He might be feeling a little bit of pressure. But meanwhile, we've got some pressure to get an on-board lap, as we were going to get AJ's lap, but unfortunately he's made his way into the pit lane there. He knew what was coming, and he decided to very quickly make his way into the pit lane. Well, of course, that can't quite be so surely, because there's a post-round broadcast. It's not quite live, but I'll tell you one thing. It does sometimes happen whereby it just seems coincidence, perhaps, that we pick a driver to look at, and in the end, they do something completely unpredictable. But right now, as Pancakes makes his way towards the timeline, we definitely jump aboard with him for a flyer as he makes his way up towards turn number 1. So as he does so, coming in towards the opening left-hander, and we're on to the brakes there, braking about 150 metres from quarter apex and trailing off down to second gear. Coming through with left-hander, and ooh, understeers very wide there for Pancakes. That's a lap over, just like that. But immediately you can see there, both drivers reactive for SimCity Racing, and both pull off to the side there. Well, that seems to be a bit of a cursed on-board lap, and so he resets the pit lane. They both do, but that might be the qualifying session done and dusted for Dickinson and Pancakes, because Dickinson was going to be the tow car, although he is leaving the pit lane. Pancakes is following him, but it means now they've only got 1 lap left, because they were on of their full lap. They've now lost that, and the out lap they now do is their 5th lap that's available to them. They don't get any extra out laps. The first out lap is the only out lap they get access to, and therefore they'll have their final lap available after the out lap. But that is definitely a bit of a twist in the tail there. Could we see some late improvement from a driver? Knotavin goes a bit higher as he makes his way towards the end of the banking right now. And as he does so, trying to gradually draft his way past the car there of Cat Daddy. And what's going to happen, we'll have to see. But meanwhile, we jump aboard with Cat Daddy for a flyer as he makes his way down towards turn number 1. Now the playing race car driver comes in towards the braking zone, currently 6th fastest. And as he does so, going all the way down the gearbox, running as wide as he can. You're allowed to put 2 wheels beyond the white line on the right-hand side. Any more than that, it will be a slowdown penalty in the case of qualifying an invalidated lap. Those track limits have been tightened up recently. But as he dances his way through the chicane, now making his way in towards the horseshoe hairpin at turn number 4, braking down about 100 metres and quarter apex down to first gear. Bit of an early apex there. I did want to go a little bit later, but still, Cat Daddy does get the run out the corner, plants the throttle, and now up towards turn number 5 he ascends. But as he does so, you notice here as he throws the car into left-hander, will look to his right-hand side for his marker, the 100 board denoting when you want to get ready to turn in an MX-5. And now over to the left-hand side he goes. Onto the brakes here, about 150 metres and quarter apex, down the gearbox to first gear. And as he glides his way through, a bit too aggressive there on the downshift. And for Cat Daddy, it all goes around. And is this going to be the day where we can't get on board lap with driver, ladies and gentlemen? It seems to be cursed to be so. As meanwhile, Urko makes his way towards the timeline. And, well, he has been working to a degree with niCKaLaToR. But right now, I think trying to do things under his own steam as he roars his way down. And we're going to try and get on board with Urko here. This will be the 3rd and final attempt to try to get an on board lap, ladies and gentlemen. As I get the feeling right now, these on board lap may be cursed at Daytona. But making his way through turn 1, that was absolutely smooth as you like it for the Bold Life Motorsport driver. Good to see him back of the grid. And, well, immediately back here and back to some of his best dancing around the circuit as he comes down towards turn number 4. Onto the brakes. make his way through the right-hander, and well, as he heads up towards turns 5 and 6, well, now it's all about nailing this run through the left-hander and making sure he gets himself set up for the next braking zone. Coming in towards the corner here, and as he does so, just gradually steer it into the corner there. Not too much steering input, and that keeps the car nicely balanced as he now breaks his way, using the escape road on his left-hand side as his marker, going all the way down to second gear for turn number 6. Exiting out and now up towards turn number 7. This is where the infield ends, of course, and this will be a sharp left-hand 90-degree corner as he breaks his way in towards the left-hander, breaking at about 100 meters from corner apex. Early apex there uses the curb to turn the car, although he has to be careful of the bump in the road as you exit the corner when you're on a tight line. There is a huge bump, and that can unsettle the rear of the car, but not so for Urko today, as he's managed that nicely as he now makes way onto the banking. Off camera, Knotavin improved to a 2:13.384, so just squeezing ahead of Urko by the best part of what is 6 hundredths of a second, as Urko makes his way along the banking and down towards the chicane. As he gets ready for the bus stop chicane, looking to his right-hand side, and well, he'll be looking for what will be the yardage boards in 3, then 2, and then 1, but he'll break there at the 1 board, denoting the best part of 75 meters from the entry corner, and he rolls his way through from 9-10 and in towards 11. Lovely line there from Urko, absolutely nailing those apexes if they owe money, and now make his way up towards turn number 12 here. Well, right now, the number 33 drive flat out all the way towards the timeline at this point, and here he'll be head down in the car. It literally will be keep the straightest possible line on the oval banking, minimal amount of steering input as possible, and gain every mile an hour speed that you can as he heads towards that timeline. Now, he does have niCKaLaToR still using the draft off the back of his car, and as he gets towards that timeline, what's it going to be for Urko? Does he improve for 9th place of his own steam, of course? Remember, he's done this without slipstream as well, and the answer is going to be he doesn't improve. He practically matches his previous best, and for Urko right now, well, that's the side of how far he can go without a tow, as meanwhile niCKaLaToR decides to park up as well and complete all his qualifying laps. Dickinson and Pancakes working together. They're trying to get Pancakes onto the front row here to make it a SimplySteve Racing front row lockout. That's not something they've achieved this season. They've come close to it, particularly last time out at VIR. They were literally only 2 attempts away from achieving it. But here they come towards the timeline, and Pancakes has improved so far. And he's going to get the biggest possible tow. And Pancakes goes to front row. He goes to pole position at 2:11.475. A very impressive lap to complete the qualifying session there for the 481 driver. And he's going to be absolutely ecstatic about that. Meanwhile, as more of the drivers come to the end of their qualifying session, Garlic Dog crossed the line at 2:15.205. He does not improve on his previous best of 2:14.99, and what can anybody else find imprint out there? Well, Knotavin right now with no draft to work with. I think this is going to be a miracle improvement if so, although to be fair, this man has pulled off miracles in the last 2 seasons, no doubt about it, including this season. And as he makes his way towards that timeline, what's it going to be for the 28 driver? It's not to be in the end. He stays in 8th, but remember, of course, qualifying just one part of the story, and not perhaps as important a part as it would be at other circuits. But as drivers do cool on down and calm down, we've got a few parts up in the pit lane, but everyone has completed their qualifying laps. And how about it? For the first time this season, and what will be the only time this season, Pancakes takes a qualifying pole position, but also on top of that, he helps lock out the front row alongside his teammate of Dickinson, and well, it is going to be a SimCity Racing 1-2. Bobnova starts in 3rd place, and while SimplySteve makes way out to the circuit, he will not have the time available here, we don't think, to be able to get another lap in, so therefore this is just a reconnaissance lap he's doing in the minute that he's got left, and well, he'll be starting 4th place at best, despite the fact he's got 2 laps still remaining, well, 1 lap remaining with this out lap. He's not used up all the laps available to him, but he'll be starting 4th alongside Bobnova. niCKaLaToR starts 5th, Cat Daddy 6th ahead of AJ, and Knotavin completes the top 8. And, well, Knotavin there, championship leader. No, and he's got a bit of work to do here today, but I have to wait and see what way it's going to play out for him. But again, the slipstream here at Daytona is really going to make qualifying, well, a moot point, and, well, he'll be hoping that he can very quickly ascend his way through the field. Urko and Garlic Dog will be on that 5th row, and not setting a time in qualifying, but hopefully we do get to see him on the grid today, will be goodbye. And we're just checking in with race control at the moment as to his situation and whether we will be seeing him out there. And unfortunately, I do believe we may not be seeing Gabay out there at all today. And if so, well, that is an absolute gut wrench, no doubt about it, because we will be down a car already before we have gone green flag racing. But just like that, ladies and gentlemen, 20 minutes of qualifying has been completed here for the DC's 44 Ever Never Washed at Daytona Cities of Finale. And as we bring qualifying to a close, well, next up is our 5-minute warm-up. And then we will be making our way onto the grid for our 1 and only race, the 60-minute Crown Jewel race to complete the season. So all the drivers get a bit of a breather. Normally they wouldn't get this before going into the first race of the day, but indeed they're getting a bit of a breather now. And well, understandably so. I think they all want the breather after that one. They'll need to definitely think about fuel. They'll need to think about all the strategies and everything thrown into the mix here for what will be this race. It's such a pivotal race, particularly for those competing for second through to sixth in the championship. And just a reminder with regards to how that stands at the moment, it is a battle between the likes of a whole variety of our roster that includes none other than what would be what would be Bobnova, niCKaLaToR, Beaver, SimplySteve, and Dickinson, with only 16 points separating the quintet. And we're all of them trying to nip at the heels in Knotavin, but Knotavin, of course, with only being now the grand total of 57 points up for grabs here today, he has had his job made a little bit easier compared to perhaps the 72 that we would have expected if we would have had the sprint race as well. But unfortunately, due to scheduling issues, we have seen that sprint race have to be removed from the schedule. And well, still, we'll be awarding all the points that we normally would. SimplySteve, meanwhile, practicing making his way out of the pit lane. And well, pit entry and pit exit, something that our drivers will not typically be used to this season. Given the fact the only time they've normally had to come into the pits is due to repair work on the car. They typically had to tow to the pit lane. But also the Daytona pit lane is somewhere where you can make and lose a lot of time, given how the fact you come in off of the oval banking, and it really is a battle of the brakes to the limiter line. And SimplySteve perhaps also getting used to the fact you come off the limiter quite early once you leave the pit lane, and you're then running parallel to what would be the turn 1 through to 3 complex, and the speed squad driver will be definitely thinking to himself that he can make or break some time there. So all that and more, it's definitely going to be of intrigue as he makes his way out of the pits, and as he does so, going through the curvature and up towards turn number 1. Well, right now, your American driver here getting himself all set and ready to go. And you can see how tight it is on that pit lane exit as well. It is essentially a mini hairpin as he then goes through, coming off the limiter now, and then roaring his way all the way out. And as he does so, just picking up the speed there, and absolutely smooth as he does so. But as he does, well, we take a look to the scenic view, and as we do, just to remind you, of course, with regards to our schedule here at Daytona today for round number 6 of Season 13 of the MX-5 edition of the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series brought to you on iRacing. This is the DC's 44 Ever Never Washed at Daytona, and where we only have the 60-minute Crown Jewel race on the schedule, and it's coming up in 2.5 minutes' time. We do not have what is our typical 20-minute sprint race, and unfortunately that is due to a scheduling issue, but it does mean everything is on the line in one race here today at Daytona, and well, it's going to be a very interesting one, no doubt about it. As niCKaLaToR, he decides to grace the track with his presence for a brief moment, and as he does so, well, just getting himself all set up in the number 5. Weather conditions here today as well, we bring those up on the right side of the screen. A much cooler day here, and in fact we are heading very much into evening time here. I'm not quite sure if we're going to get to night time. We may see the floodlights come on towards the end of the race, we may not, but right now we are still with quite a bit of ambient light here, plus also we are in the peak of the summer currently, which does mean we're going to have extended sunlight hours. Most likely sunset will be around 9 o'clock in the evening. Of course, at the moment, the racing as per local time being the best part there of 20 past 7 in the evening. And we do have relatively cool temperatures, 81 degrees Fahrenheit ambient and 86 degrees Fahrenheit track temperature. You add it all together and it means that this circuit today should be very comfortable on the tyres compared to what we've seen in the last couple of rounds on the streets of Chicago, plus also at VIR, where the temperatures were definitely pushing upwards of 110 if not 120 degrees Fahrenheit on the tarmac. And for those of you who are still in the world of Celsius, well, you would be looking at there 40 to 50 degrees Celsius in those hotter conditions, whereas here today you are looking at only around about what is 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, if my memory serves me correctly. It is a bit of a difficult conversion to do off the cuff, but still, it is a lot cooler. And we've got a lot of cloud here as well, which will be helping keep those track temperatures down. Not only what you do see happen is that track temperature really comes up when the sun is bearing down the circuit, but clouds, of course, are a bit of a double-edged sword, because if you have clouds throughout the whole day, you don't get much sunlight exposure to the circuit, so track temperature never truly rises. It only rises because of drivers being out on circuit and laying down rubber, and you need a big field to really bring out that track temperature aggressively. So with the 10 cars that we've seen out on the circuit so far, that track temperature is not going to evolve too quickly. Whereas if you do have sun initially, and then you have the cloud come over, the cloud essentially causes a bit of a greenhouse effect on the circuit, whereby the track temperature will dissipate, but as it does, it gets caught in the cloud layer, and actually it stays in the atmosphere. So what you do find actually happens is you get an ambient temperature that gradually starts to rise. The humidity levels start to go up as well, which do change the way the circuit handles, and so that track temperature doesn't really go down. But what is going down right now, ladies and gentlemen, is that this practice session is complete, and it is time to make our way to the grid. It is time for our crown jewel race here at Daytona International Speedway. And so as our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for our season finale. And well, word just in, we are inverting the starting order from the qualifying time. So as a result, it means Knotavin, who took 8th place in qualifying, actually takes pole position for the purposes of what will be our final and only race of the season here at Daytona. Well, how about that? The night racing drive. He knew that beforehand. He's definitely played a 5-brain strategy on this one, because I can tell you one thing, the Canadian driver right now will take that pole position with AJ joining him on the front row. Cat D for playing race cars lines up on row number 2, and he will be in the company there of none other than niCKaLaToR for Bobnova Motorsport. And then we do have SimplySteve starting in 5th place for Speed Squad, head of Bobnova for Team What Team. Dickinson for SimCity Racing, his teammate Pancakes. Well, after all their hard work to get onto the front row in qualifying, well, they will still take what will be the 1-2 in qualifying, but it won't be a front row lockout now for them. It is essentially a full row lockout instead. They're going to be fuming about that one, but now they've got to try and take all that temper and put it onto the track. Meanwhile, Urko for Bobnova Motorsport and Playing Races Cars Garlic Dog, well, they start off in 9th and 10th respectively. And then sadly, I do believe due to technical issues with the car, which are continuing to plague him, Gabay will be going no further, and his season has come to a halt before he's even turned a lap here at Daytona. And for the number 22 driver, well, he'll be watching from the sidelines in this one as we're all set and ready to go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, is a little bit of a twist there as we make our way to the grid for the final time. But yes, we have a top 8 inversion here. Is despite the fact we are missing our 20-minute sprint race, but the top 8 has been inverted. The organisers have decided we are inverting what is this grid for the crown jewel race. So the 2 points for pole position will go to Pancakes. However, he won't be starting on pole. It is instead the man who is your championship leader, and right now 60 minutes away from successfully defending his season 12 title. Well, as they all make the way around, and of course, the big question is for our drivers, who exactly is going to come away victorious. But as they all get themselves ready to go, there's only one way you can start a race here at Daytona. And many of you who grew up in the 80s and 90s will know about it. If you ever went to an arcade stand at any of your local amusement parks, it is, of course, by talking about the arcade theme for Daytona International Speedway, the machine of Daytona, USA. And, well, that wonderful theme being brought together by none other than Takanobu Mitsuyoshi all those many years ago. As our drivers make the way around, well, I'm going to give you my best impression of it very shortly, although I think it is going to pierce some ears, because as our drivers build up the speed, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to let go away here at Daytona, or as Takanobu Mitsuyoshi would say, it is time to Daytona! And if I pierce some ears there, let's go away, ladies and gentlemen, because it is time for 60 minutes of racing as they roar their way away and down towards turn number 1. Knotavin leads the way then ahead of AJ, and as they come on down in towards that braking zone, well, who's going to come out ahead? As we see 3 wide, 5 behind. Cat Daddy there going side by side, Bobnova as well, and as they roll the way out the corner right now, everyone pushing hard, but Cat Daddy already having some technical difficulties, but he finds himself back in the thick immediately as they roll the way in towards the hairpin. But we can see that AJ coming back at Knotavin strong as they make the way onto the brakes, rolling the way through the corner and emerge on out right now. 2 wide, but AJ picking up understeer, and as they roar the way in towards the next hairpin, well, there's going to be niCKaLaToR on the outside. They were backing off with Knotavin coming across him. So right now it does seem as though AJ and Knotavin have got the bit between their teeth. But goodness me, this is a feisty start between all these drivers as they come down in towards the second of the hairpins. Behind, there's Urko looking for a bit of a move around the outside of Pancakes. Pancakes meanwhile just holding his ground as Garlic Dog watching all this from 10th place. And I'm thinking now's not the time to get involved a bit later. But still 2 by 2, you would think they were in a high-speed formation lap here, but it's not quite so. They're all fighting as AJ defending versus Knotavin in towards turn number 7. There's Cat Daddy on the inside versus niCKaLaToR. And coming on through the corner right now, SimplySteve a bit further back, and well, holding his line versus Dickinson there, but now they make the run to the banking for the first proper time here at full speed, and as they do, where are we going to see the change of the foot? Remember the fact that right now Knotavin on the low line, AJ on the high line, but AJ having to go for a wider circumference to quarter. Yes, he's got an overspeed, but it's only very gradual he'll start to make use of it as they come down towards the braking zone. Number 28 driver on the inside, but here comes Cat Daddy looking to make it 3 wide into the bus stop. And where's Cat Daddy going to take the lead here? I think he is. It's a cheeky move from Cat Daddy, but he comes on through. And then the rest of the field now makes their way up through. But you can see there the top 5 immediately going into single file as they coming out. And well, we will see the rest of the field now go single file as they fall a second behind. Dickinson at the head of the second group. He's in 6th with Urko, SimplySteve, Pancakes and Garlic Dog there. And we have confirmation Gabay not taking part in this race due to technical issues with the car. And therefore his race coming to a halt before it's really got going. But as they all head towards the end of lap 1, it's been a brilliant open lap here, and right now it's not over yet as AJ now starting to tow his way through. Knotavin pushing AJ along. We see niCKaLaToR also deciding to play the game of work with the group, as meanwhile Cat Daddy being left to go low. Well, to the end of lap 1 they go, and as they come down towards turn number 1 once again, it's AJ who leads with Knotavin behind. Then we've got niCKaLaToR and Cat Daddy side by side. Bobnova getting into the mix. Meanwhile, Urko squeezes way ahead of Urko and SimplySteve. But in fact, that's going to be Dickinson getting back ahead now as he slices his way through. So Dickinson very eager to be in that 6th place, but understand he's got to bring them back to the leaders right now. Particularly if he wants to give himself the best possible chance of being runner-up in the championship, if not the champion. But of course, if things were to finish as they currently stand, it would be Knotavin every step of the way who would be your champion. So that is where the big intrigue or the big thought process will be as they all now make their way in towards turns 5 and 6. They're coming through. AJ right now still trying to keep Knotavin at bay here. These two absolutely fight each other. This is golden, no doubt about it. Bobnova a little bit further back. I think right now sitting in 5th place and just enjoyed himself out there. And the team, what team driver we ride on board with, I think his thought process will be just simply hold your ground, be smart about it, and wait for a lot later on in this race. Again, 60 minutes of racing here. This is not your standard 40-minute feature race. This is not a standard 20-minute sprint race. You could add the two together, and that's what you've got for this Crown Jewel race. Unfortunately, I'm missing our sprint, but still, we make up for it here with a very fasty race. And I get the feeling that as we have not had a sprint race, right now our drivers have got even more energy which they're throwing into this one, and well, normally it'd be quite a peaceful race, but so far it's been far from peaceful, albeit there's not been any elbows between drivers, but a lot of drivers have been wanting to chop and change. But here they come past us once again, making their way down towards the bus stop chicane, and as they do, well, there goes Garlic Dog on through. But as we can see, AJ squeezes his way back into the bus stop ahead, and Knotavin, well, the whole field has now come back together. It's less than 3 tenths from car to car to car, as AJ there taking a very slow run out of the chicane. And well, that might be tactical, to be fair. The idea is that by being a bit slow at the chicane, he causes Knotavin to lose the ability to get an overspeed to go onto the bank. And there's a lot of tactics involved when it comes to oval racing indeed. When I was growing up, I'm going to put my hand up and say, when I watched NASCAR every so often on TV, when my parents would let me, when it seemed to be a bit of a taboo, I used to think it was all about just driving in ovals. But right now, when they're going 3, almost 4 wide there, well, right now niCKaLaToR puts himself right in the middle. That was a bit of a scary boat. You could see there that it was going to be one of the plain race cars machines who had to back off there from the 4 wide, where they come into the brain zone. But niCKaLaToR trying to part the seas here. Into what's turn of 1 they go. Oh, and there's been a bit of an instant there. 3 cars coming together, and that is going to be Urko, also Knotavin, and I do believe SimplySteve all getting caught up. And well, Sonny was a pack of 10, becomes a pack of 7 as they come down towards the horseshoe hairpin. I'll have to get a replay of that very shortly as to what exactly has happened there, but that's gone very wrong. I believe Garlic Dog also got caught out with that one, so Garlic Dog has slipped away, so it's actually a pack of 6 now, and just like that, well, it can very quickly go wrong, but understand, be able to wait and see whether it will stay that way, because at this point, those involved in that incident need to get repairs to their cars, no doubt about it, and once they do, well, the thought process is likely going to be, can they realistically catch back up to the leaders? Can they pull off some magic to do so? Well, they're going to need to work together, but Knotavin already made his way back past SimplySteve, who's definitely in the more wounded car. By comparison, I think SimplySteve is going to have to make his way to the pit lane, although he has set the fastest lap of the race on lap number 2 at that 2 minute 12.11. Now, will that stand the entire test time? That is a mammoth fastest lap, to be fair, and that's been done through the draft. It's a tenth quicker than what Pancake's been able to do. We'll have to wait and see later on, because, of course, these cars will be heavy with fuel at the moment. They will be a lot lighter on fuel later on, but will we see our drivers work together again? And remember, I suspect that SimplySteve probably had the best part of a 6-car tow for that lap, whereas now, with this field being a bit more diminished, he won't have that tow by comparison. But here they come through once again, and as our top 6 do, we're making the way in towards the chicane this time. And Bobnova at the head of the pack. And once they sliced away between the curves there, Bobnova's picking up the pace, really attacking those curves. Dickinson has to be careful. They're going over what is the very pyramid-shaped sausage curves. And, well, we'd normally call them sausage curves. They'd be rounded. But if anything, they're pyramids now. And, well, Dickinson having to go higher there. I wouldn't be surprised if he's picked up a bit of a slowdown penalty he's having to burn. And in fact, no, that might just be going up there. The only other reason he would be is he's perhaps trying to burn a bit of an overspeed or trying to delay the slipstream that he gets. And you can see in full splendor as he blasts his way on past, and right now make his way around the outside behind AJ, niCKaLaToR and Cat Daddy all there. And, well, these drivers now coming down in towards the opening braking zone again for the 4th time of asking. AJ giving a big bump to the back of Bobnova there and saying to him, nope, you can take the lead if you don't mind. And, well, in the end, AJ has to back off there. I think Bobnova braking a lot earlier than AJ expected. And suddenly, well, that's definitely caught him out. And, well, that's going to be Dickinson sweeping around the outside to retake the lead, albeit for a temporary moment as he takes some grass with him. And into the brakes they go here in towards the hairpin. And this time, well, Dickinson getting his elbows out once again. And Dickinson right now, it may have started in an unexpected 7th place when he should have been starting 2nd, he would argue, but right now he's got himself right up into the lead as Pancakes, his teammates, on the back of this group. So SimCityRacing, well, things for the fish as they currently stand, they would be your provisional team champions for season 13. They would do enough, but as they come down in towards the hairpin of turn number 6, you can see niCKaLaToR on the inside of AJ, and all this battling absolutely on the limit between these drivers, and there is nothing between them at this moment other than what is the millimetres of tarmac that separates the cars. But otherwise, everyone really getting stuck into the fight. But as they roll the way up and onto the oval banking, well, we're going to take a quick look back in time, ladies and gentlemen, at what exactly happened at the start of lap number 3. So this was as the drivers made the way in, and we're looking at SimplySteve first. He was at the back of all of this. So what went wrong? And I think we have our explanation there. So there was a bit of a touch between Urko and Knotavin, and SimplySteve just happened to be in the wrong place at the right time to get caught up in it. Now, can we see an alternative perspective with regards to Urko and Knotavin as they made their way into that braking zone? And, well, it looked so Urko there actually had to pull the car to the right on his inside at the time. Was one of the SimCityRacing cars, and I think that caused Urko to lose out a little bit. Was he pushed to the right slightly when it happened? Can we potentially get an on board from Urko's car? I think we can. And this was on board. Let's listen in. So to the left of him, that was AJ we're right on board with here. Can we get a perspective? No, in fact, this is Urko we're right on board with. We apologise there. The driver data incorrect. And as he made his way into the braking zone, what exactly happened? And the answer was, I think there was a little bit of a tap, and that's what sent him around to Knotavin, and then subsequently it all fell apart. And this is what it looked like from Knotavin's perspective. Although we are going to stay with the exterior pictures here and just get a final look. And in the end, I think there was a small tap to Urko's car, and it did just simply send them all on a bit of a collision course. That explains the story. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we do come back to your live racing. As we do come back, still plenty of time to go. And there we are, trialling out our brand new edition of our replay software there. We have slightly upgraded the software for the purposes of today's broadcast. It does have a few little tidbits that do need fixing, including those driver details being incorrect there. But right now it is working. A huge thank you to Arturo Milga for all his brilliant software. That's definitely helped us get to this point with the replay. So it should be a little bit slicker now as we take a look back at moments of racing action. But as Bobnova and Dickinson continue to fight, the other great thing, of course, with our upgraded replay software now is the fact, unlike what we saw at Chicago, where because we did cut away for extended replays, we did miss what was an absolute epic of side-by-side between Dust and Knotavin. But of course, if we never filmed it, did it really happen? Well, joking aside, it did happen. We just didn't get to film it on the broadcast. Well, what now happens is the fact we actually pause time. We do cut back for replays of big moments, and then we come back to where we left off. So therefore, we shouldn't miss a trick as of this season finale and going into season 14. But as the drivers make the way on through, well, Cat Daddy going high right now versus Bobnova. And meanwhile, a little bit further behind, niCKaLaToR enjoying a side-by-side with AJ and Pancakes. They come in towards turn number 1. But as they do so, well, you're leading 6 together still. And what exactly? Oh, goodness me, it's gone wrong there. And well, Sunny, ends up into this. Oh, my goodness. And Pancakes there coming into the drifting path of his teammate Dickinson. And well, the two teammates take each other out as well from the equation. And suddenly, what is a top 6 becomes a leading duo of AJ and niCKaLaToR. And well, given the fact we've still got the best part of 50 minutes to go, well, this is going to be now a pair that's going to have to see if they can break apart. But for Pancakes, he's had to tow to the pit lane. That's gone very, very wrong. There's so many drivers, and who had it go wrong first is the question. Who may be at the core of the incident, not to say at the fault of the incident, there's a difference. But Garnet Dog right now gets himself back together with his teammate Cat Daddy behind. Well, is this going to be enough for SimCity Racing now with Pancakes in the pit lane and Dickinson in 5th, but definitely missing the whole front end of his car? Is this going to be a big twist in the tail here in the Teams Championship, and will we see a different team take over? As me or niCKaLaToR and AJ, they continue to battle if it's never happened, to be fair. Well, good on them for carrying on. And right now the fight continues to thicken between them, as meanwhile behind, well, it's anybody's guess how it's going to play out now. Now, in theory, playing race cars who came into this round 22 points behind leaders Speed Squad. Well, if they were to take a 3rd and a 4th here, they would run things very close to SimCity Racing in terms of taking that championship crown. It would be literally by slender margins if things were to finish as they currently stand. And well, I do believe as well we could see some improvements from some of the other teams out there, but that's always the intrigue with regards to where this Teams Championship goes. And let's not forget Bong Life Motorsport as well, of which we do have the absolutely brilliant efforts of niCKaLaToR being put in at the moment. And you've got Urko here, so right now we could have literally a Teams Championship decided by individual points rather than tens of points. And well, how about that? And these big incidents have definitely served to shuffle up the way things are proceeding at the moment. But meanwhile, we do see Knotavin now moving back up into 5th place, but Dickinson struggling on. He's trying to get to the pit lane. The point of this, the reason why he's not towed to the pits despite the damage on the car is because in iRacing, for those uninitiated, if you tow to the pit lane in a race, you have this tow time penalty, which is aimed to model the fact that in real life, if you were to crash somewhere out on the circuit, your car would have to be towed off the circuit and eventually towed back to the paddock or to the pit lane for repair work to get it back out there, or at least towed back so that way you can retrieve the car and go home with it. And well, understandably, the further you are away from the pit lane, the longer the tow time. But given the fact the incident occurred on the exit of turn number 1 in towards turn number 2, they weren't that far away from the pit lane, but understand it still takes quite a bit of time, and each circuit has its own unique tow times, and also it does depend on where exactly the incident has occurred. Sometimes there are specific tow times for certain corners, and that is to model the fact that sometimes it's not easy to get a retrieval crane or a retrieval flatbed truck out there to go retrieve the car. As Dickinson, well, he's taking his fast repair and immediately makes his way back out there. He's also taking a quick splash and dash of fuel into the car as well, and that may help him a bit later on. That was a 4-second stop, so fast repair would have literally been about 2 seconds, and he's just taken perhaps a lap of fuel to help him on his way. As he makes his way out of the pit lane, we're almost towards the end of the first quarter of this race, and there's still plenty to go. Well, the thing we do need to take a look back at is what exactly happened there, going on to lap number 5. And here's the replay, ladies and gentlemen, to explain, starting with a look from Cat Daddy's perspective on our exterior cameras. Now, Cat Daddy was the lead at the time. Under braking, he went with Bobnova, made his way into turn 1, came across there. Bobnova had nowhere really to go, and well, I'm not going to point the finger at Cat Daddy, but it did look as though there he tried to come to an apex, which wasn't entirely his, and perhaps misanticipated where Bobnova was in relation. Can we potentially see an onboard from Bobnova's perspective? We'll try to take a look, and well, as we do come back to what happened between them, this was the look from Bobnova's car as they made the way on through the corners. Well, that contact there, and when it sent Bobnova's car sideways and into the barrier. As quick as that, and well, definitely went very wrong for Bobnova. What did it look like meanwhile from other camera perspectives? And this was, I do believe, taking a look from one of the other cameras and focusing on Dickinson's car. There was the contact between Bobnova and Cat Daddy, and as Bobnova went round, collected Dickinson, who in turn went onto the warpath of his teammate of Pancakes there, and well, definitely bring them all together. And this is what it looked like from onboard Pancakes' car as he made his way in, and well, definitely went all wrong between them, and were being collected there. And unfortunately, the bonnet coming flying up, well, I think Pancakes at that point was just trying to survive the incident, but unfortunately going for the space that was available, and it didn't work out as we make our way back to your live racing. So as we do come back, still a long way to go in this race. And right now for several drivers, well, it's definitely been difficulty, no doubt about it. Bobnova here and still chasing after Urko. So he's still got a partner to play with at Daytona. But understandably, he's got 3/4 of the race plus a final lap now. Pancakes is leaving the pit lane as well. And so therefore he has served his pit stop time and total time as well. A lot of repair work done to the car. Well, I wonder if Pancakes potentially didn't have the fast repair on, given the fact he spent 3 minutes in the pit lane. I would have expected it to be about a minute to 1.5 minutes, given the proximity to what was the pits, plus the fast repair being available. But we'll have to see as we will come all the way back to the front of the field. And as we do, we take a quick sip of water. Hydration breaks, always important. Are we still allowed to call them hydration breaks, given the World Cup is now over? Well, the Soccer World Cup, your guess is as good as mine. But right now, niCKaLaToR and AJ definitely pushing each other along here. And now this really is just a game plan, which is work together all the way to the end as we look from the rear of the Bobnova Motorsport car. And, well, the Illuminati Pepe machine there of AJ. And, well, that livery definitely psychedelic and also very Pepega in equal measure. I do believe Pepe being the nickname given to the green frog on the car. And, well, niCKaLaToR right now, definitely, I think, feeling as though he's getting way too much Pepe in his rearview mirrors and he wants to try and make a breakaway. Or will he have some Pepe in his step? I can't believe I just said that. But here we go as they make the way onto lap number 7. Long way to go for these drivers. And right now, of course, some of the liveries out here, very professional looking in terms of really embodying a race team. And then meanwhile, some other liveries, all about having some fun out there. Although, to be fair, there's some great professionalism in these liveries being put together. As we do see AJ making his way on around there. And well, I'm just noticing all the different editions of the Pepe emoji on the side of the car, or the Pepe frog meme. And well, right now, I can't stop grinning as I think he'll be grinning a bit too much as he runs wide, understeering wide. There's AJ in the 45. But goodness me, as he rolls well through, definitely working hard. As Bobnova, meanwhile, has had a bit of a swap with Urko. Further down the order, these two are back and forth, but I suspect this is more a bit of teamwork here between two drivers not part of the same team. But the thought process is that they need to really work together right now if they want to try and make something out of this race. And, well, understanding when it's all gone wrong, the only thing you can do is work with the next man. And the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And right now, they definitely want to be friends out there rather than enemies to try and make up the 5-second gap to SimplySteve, who has no draft partner to work with. And, well, they'll be happy about that. But as we look back to the front, AJ swapping the lead back into his hands versus niCKaLaToR. And 6.5 seconds back. Here's CatDaddy and Garlic Dog. The two teammates working together here as they glide the way between the apexes. But right now, this is really a golden opportunity, some would say, for what will be playing race cars to not just take a podium and with it also 2 top 5s, but also to potentially close up to AJ and niCKaLaToR. With the amount of back and forth that is going on between AJ and niCKaLaToR, if CatDaddy and Garlic Dog can close the gap to each other, they might be able to make something happen. But it does look as though Garlic Dog at the moment might be struggling a little bit for pace by comparison with his teammate. He's falling back. 1.7 seconds is the gap. He's in the distant tow, but he's not able to get closer that quickly at the moment. He is inching closer by hundredths of a second, but I wonder if Garlic Dog perhaps is just not as quick in the sections of the circuit where he needs the speed, but it's heavy braking zones, and that's why CatDaddy is leaving him behind. And, well, Knotavin, having just taken half a second out of Garlic Dog in a clean lap, where he's had no draft, and, well, coming out of turn number 1, he's just cut another 2 seconds out of him almost there. And Garlic Dog's not had the best of runs through turn number 1. I don't think it's going to be long here before we do see Knotavin looking for a move, and this will move up into 4th place. Well, it's not over yet for the defending champion and the favourite to take the championship crown here. And, well, right now, things for the fish as they stand, he would be a champion, but I think he's got his sights firmly set on that podium, and we'll catch up to CatDaddy. And as he does so, will he find himself stuck behind CatDaddy as he did in qualifying for the most part, or will he find a way to make his way further forward? Well, from them, we come back to Bobnova and Urko. The gap between them went to a second, but that was all part of the drafting, what was treaty between the two. And, well, these two are definitely working together. The drafting alliance, we should say. And indeed, these alliances are temporarily forged on the circuit, and then they will be broken as quickly as they are brought together. But they do have a comfort gap of 33.5 seconds to Pancakes. And here you can see the second member of the SimCity racing team. He is out there at the moment. And the car carrying on, albeit definitely looking a bit wounded earlier, but now back to 100% condition. And, well, the team doing a good job at getting that car repaired as he tries to repair his race. But back to the front, niCKaLaToR and AJ, they swap once again. And, well, leaving it to very small margins to swap the cars around here in the draft train. As coming back to Knotavin, on the back of Garlic Dog as he makes his way through the bus stop. And the iRacing driver there, hopping and skipping his way between the curbs. And at this point, getting so close that now he's going to be getting the draft there as they roar the way onwards. And here he goes as the Canadian driver looking for the move. Taps the rear there of Garlic Dog. That completely unsettles the rear of the number 199. So Knotavin there coming on quite strong. You can see really trying to give the bump draft there. As you'll see his speed every so often plateaus for a brief moment. And then it continues to build. And every time it does plateau, that's because he's imparting or bumping the rear of his rival's car. And just help him along there. But now goes down to the inside here. I think Knotavin decided, right, I've got enough now. I've helped you out as much as I can. And now it's time for me to go for the low line and move up into fourth place. And he'll do so there. Personal best of the race, 2:13.318. And we've got Dog still on the outside of him. And through the opening bend. And as they come on through there, well, Knotavin now up into fourth. And his next target, Cat Daddy, 4 seconds away. But now this will be a game of who's the quicker, simply in clear air and can do the best possible lap under their own steam at Daytona. And theory would be Knotavin will be the one who can do that based on his all-round season form. I do not rule out Cat Daddy, to be fair. With no pressure on him at the moment, he may just be able to relax a little bit more into this one and really build up some good lap time. But Dickinson and SimplySteve, they're a bit further back. In 6th place here is Dickinson, as he makes his way out of turns 1, 2 and 3 and in towards the hairpin. As he does, SimplySteve a little bit further adrift, 12 seconds by him. And the number 23 driver right now, making sure to keep within touch of Dickinson in terms of lap time, getting a 10th on him on the previous lap. But Bobnova and Urko are both catching by a couple of attempts a lap. And we've got a lot of laps to go here. If you do the quick mathematics, given the fact we've seen lap times of approximately 2 minutes 12 to 2 minutes 13, you would think that over the course of the race distance, we are going to be looking at around about 26 to 27 laps, if my mental maths is correct. Well, that is definitely going to give drivers plenty of time to try and make up the ground. And, well, for Bobnova, if he gains 2 tenths a lap, it won't be enough. He will need to be gaining about 3 to 4 tenths a lap to get himself onto the back of SimplySteve. But he'll definitely be committed. He's got Urko to work with as well, and that's always a big benefactor in the fact that if you've got somebody you can draft with when they get close enough to you, it can help you close that gap down. Well, back to the front of the field we come, and niCKaLaToR and AJ still working together for now. Well, that last lap, Cat Daddy did manage to bring down 6 tenths to them. I think this lap they decided, well, Cat Daddy closing, they need to actually work together for a little bit. And as AJ drafts his way past, one thing to also know about these MX-5s is in terms of the slipstream zone, it's not just directly behind the cars. You do see niCKaLaToR now make his way through. There is also a side draft or a side toe, which does occur with these MX-5s. It's not that strong compared to, say, open wheel racing machines or more aerodynamic machines, but it is there and it will gain you a 10th over a long distance on a straight. When you come out of the direct draft and get alongside, you do just gain a little bit more pace. But as AJ and niCKaLaToR there, squaring off through turns 1, 2 and 3. niCKaLaToR falling back into that 2nd place spot for now. And, well, continue to play what is obedient number 2, up until the point where I think he'll disobey and make his way ahead. As we do see Garlic Dog gradually being dropped here by Knotavin. Knotavin in 4th place now, and, well, understanding the man who took the surprise pole position to the grid, even though he didn't take pole in qualifying. And, well, it's one of those situations whereby I think with all the way things have been organised today, indeed things can go wrong, but at the same time as well, well done to the J2ICS community for getting the racing going, even though we have missed our sprint race. And, well, I think all be forgiven. As meanwhile, well, Bobnova and Urko, definitely forgiveness in the air between them after what happened at this corner towards the start of the race. As right now Bobnova goes up the inside of Urko, and Urko simply says to him, right, it's to me, to you, this time it's to you, sir, as they continue to build up steam. And Urko that time around, a 2 minute 13.26, so definitely gaining another 2 tenths on SimplySteve, but now Bobnova has to do the same in return for it to be worthwhile. Otherwise, SimplySteve's advantage will expand. His gap right now to Bobnova standing at the best part of 4.3 seconds, so a bit of time to be found, as meanwhile your leaders, they swap again in towards the chicane. through the bus stop, and well, niCKaLaToR and AJ, as we said earlier on, are leaving it very fine to make these swaps. Normally, what you would expect is that if two drivers are going to work together, and they're not in the same team, so these two would not be on the radio, or most likely not be on the radio, unless the two different teams are patched through to each other, which can happen. Well, what you'd be thinking is the fact they're going to make it very clear to each other, I am going to let you go at this corner, or there is so much space here, please pass me. Whereas they're taking the adage, which is, keep us guessing every second whether they're overtaking each other or working together. Oh, niCKaLaToR falls back in there, and now will he try and come back again? And as he makes fun of the high line, I think the answer will be yes. As he's going to look round the outside here under braking. But definitely right now, they can have some fun out there. In fact, they're going to battle here. It's turn number 1, so here they go. And niCKaLaToR right now tries to go around the outside, but AJ defends it well. Well, more battling like this, and something could bring other drivers in as Knotavin comes into the pits from 4th place. So that is a strategic stop for Knotavin. Makes his way on down. As he does so, well, he'll definitely have the pit limiter on. There's a regulated pit limit there at Daytona. One of the faster pit lanes compared to some of the other circuits around the world that we visited this season. But understand there's always a speed limit that has to be adhered to. But as AJ and niCKaLaToR continue to fight back and forth, well, Cat Daddy has gained the best part of 4 attempts on through that battle at turn number 1. So he'll be hoping that the fighting continues between the two of them, because if it doesn't, well, then suddenly that gap will open up once again, and that will be a bit of a disappointing moment in terms of the worry of just losing out. But as Knotavin has served his pit stop, he's going to come back out behind SimplySteve by a second. Now, this is to put fuel in the car, a 21-second stop, dead on the dot pretty much, with regards to his stationary time. Now, by coming out behind SimplySteve, is this a sign that the fuel tanks are running dry, or have we got quite a wide pit window? Now, if I had to guess, I wonder if the niCKaLaToR driver here has thought, well, I'm slightly quicker than SimplySteve in clear air on my average laps. If I come up behind him, he is normally a very smart driver. I might be able to work with him until he pits to gain some net race time, and that would help him get closer to Cat Daddy. So I think there's some method here from Knotavin by pitting early. I think we have seen him go for an undercut, as Urko's also come in and leaves the pit lane after a 22.8-second stop. So Urko came in before Bobnova, so Bobnova and Urko have broken up their partnership for now. Indeed, this sounds as though it's an episode of what is a dating program, with the way we're describing it. And as Urko makes his way on through right now, where he's definitely feeling a bit single out there, but he's going to see if he can marry himself up to another car sooner rather than later. But who's he got to work with? Pancakes, technically. Pancakes, of course, having pitted on lap number 5 with that toe to the pit, so he has taken on some fuel. So you'd imagine Pancakes can go along, but he's 5 seconds away. I think Urko here hasn't played this quite right. I think he needed to come in with Bobnova, and I think that's the fault. And we are seeing our leaders go another lap here. So we know this fuel tank, it's not restricted to the point whereby drivers can't go further into the race. But I think that is the worry right now, is in terms of pitting. Do you pit and have a lonely pit stop, or do you pit with somebody else around you, so that way you can continue to work with them coming out of the pits? Well, that seems at the moment everyone's deciding to break up the field, unless it's Knotavin, who seems to try to time his pit stop to get to the back of SimplySteve, but he's got to close 2.4 seconds for that. And whilst all that strategic intrigue is happening, meanwhile, you've got the dueling classic here between the two stars at the front of niCKaLaToR and AJ as they come down towards the hairpin this time at turn number 6. And AJ constantly manifesting himself at the front of the pair. That is definitely one of the things that's been an observation here. The privateer right now spending the vast majority of the lap leading. However, niCKaLaToR by comparison, I think, does take the lead at the most important part, and that is just they're about to come to the start-finish line, and AJ will be aware of that. He'll have seen it time and time again, so he'll know that as we get closer towards the end of the race, he's suddenly got to change up the order between the two of them. He's got to change where he's the leader and niCKaLaToR is, as otherwise he will be seeing himself lose out if they continue the sequence. But that's a way down the road at the moment, as they make the way down the back section and up towards the bus stop. And here comes niCKaLaToR again, and see that overspeed there. That's the best part of 5 miles an hour manifesting itself as he suddenly switches around past. As he does so, AJ now appears behind as we switch to the rear view camera of the number 5. These two definitely are working it out very peacefully, and it really looks like they've rehearsed it. It's not that they have, but both drivers now really know what the game plan is here. And this working together is making sure that Cat Daddy just cannot get close enough to become a third-party threat, as he's now got an 8-second gap to Garlic Dog, and Garlic Dog's pace continues to slip away, unfortunately, as Cat Daddy now the best part of 9 seconds clear as this lap comes towards a close, and Garlic Dog definitely at risk of losing out even more so to Knotavin in the proceedings. But as we look back to the man we're referring to, he's currently in 7th, still chasing after SimplySteve. The gap to SimplySteve, 2.7 seconds at the moment. Steve, meanwhile, there he goes in the Sakura Blossom livery machine. And the 23 driver putting this livery on the car since Okayama. Well, in fact, I do believe since Tsukuba there. And, well, right now not taking it off the car at all. And I can't blame him for it. It's a beautiful livery on the car. But also absolutely clattering the curbs there. And well, doesn't necessarily want to do that. That's not healthy for the car's suspension and not healthy for the racing line he wants to take. As Bobnova for 4 seconds behind is closing gradually as well. Now, Bobnova did come in on lap number 5, took a fast repair, and he also took a full tank of fuel that he could take. So the 605 car right now, we need to keep an eye on Bobnova. He may yet spring a surprise here strategically. However, I think if he's going to try and go to the end of the race on this fuel tank, he's going to do quite a bit of fuel saving. But that's why he needs to catch up to somebody to work off the back of them for that fuel saving effort. Use the draft, and fuel saving a big part of the game. And I wonder whether AJ and niCKaLaToR are thinking about that as well. And the fact that AJ continues to be the leader, but niCKaLaToR swapping back and forth. Are they thinking about the fuel saving? Because whilst it's likely a one-stop race here, if you can shorten that pit stop to the tune of 2 seconds or so, that's going to be enough to potentially get you out ahead of your battling partner and enable you to break the toe. And that might be the way that this race does get settled in the end. But right now, at least, AJ and niCKaLaToR swapping back and forth, but AJ seems to want to exhibit some control. But it's anybody's guess out of these two who's going to be the winner of it. As niCKaLaToR getting on very close there to the bus stop chicane, quite late this time, but backs off, decides not to go for it. So is niCKaLaToR changing tact? Is he now thinking more about, well, we're getting towards the end of the fuel tank, can I just squeeze another lap out of it? Can I just save a couple of points of litre in order to be able to shorten that pit stop and take an effective lead? Well, not long before we do find out his story. Meanwhile, back to Cat Daddy and Garlic Dog we go. Right now, Cat Daddy in the number 69. Well, the gap, 5.8 seconds. It does seem to be stable, but he's just not able to bring it down. That's the problem he has, and that's what he'd like to do. But as we leave him, we come back to your leaders, and niCKaLaToR back into lead again, and always taking over at the front right as we get towards the line to move on to another lap. That start-finish line there. niCKaLaToR's really got that worked out to a T. But understand, as we said earlier on, AJ right now will be wary of that, as he's got to be wary of that rear end coming a bit loose there. And AJ making his first real notable mistake of the day in terms of a bit of a cut loose to the rear of the car. And well, your number 45 driver here right now trying to continuously push a little bit harder perhaps, and perhaps pushing a bit too hard at this point in this race. And well, will he now perhaps let niCKaLaToR lead for a bit, or does he find the look of the Bong Life Motorsport car in front of him not appealing to the eyes? Is that what it is? Is that why he's constantly staying behind? Well, that's to see as we ride aboard here with AJ for a good portion of the lap. The sun continues to set. In fact, the sun does now poke its way out from behind the clouds. And as I look at my commentator booth window, blinded by said sunshine, I can see down the pit lane there SimplySteve coming in. So SimplySteve decides to come in from what is 6th place. Knotavin will take the place back off him, having pitted earlier on. But Knotavin did not achieve his mission of closing up to the back of SimplySteve to try and use him as a little bit of a time builder. So as a result, it does mean now that Knotavin having to do all the hard work on his own steam to try and catch up to Cat Daddy on strategy. And we'll see which way it goes. But the lap times of Knotavin recently, 2:13.19 the previous lap. Cat Daddy at 2:13.69, so it is actually looking as though Knotavin might be there. But looking back to what we've got on screen, well, AJ right now going around the outside, but much slower run of the lap this time from AJ, much calmer run of the lap. And well, perhaps changing the notes here in the musical tune of their dance back and forth, in the fact that now AJ actually opting to spend the best part of half the lap sat behind niCKaLaToR. That's not normally happened. It's not even the other way around. It's not even the best part of around 75% of the lap. AJ has led it, and niCKaLaToR only getting ahead in the last possible moments. But we've now transferred into the second half of the race, as niCKaLaToR decides to come out the toe early there and use the side draft to start to build up a bit of a run. But that could be because niCKaLaToR right now trying to see how strong the side toe will be going onto the flat here before the finish line. Now, will we see either car pull into the pit lane this time? Well, I think if niCKaLaToR was going to pull into the pits, he would not have gone to the outside. But no, in fact, as now here they come to line again. You can see AJ there picks up the side draft. It is so quick how this side toe changes between car to car. It's literally as if the two cars are dead along line, they don't get a draft of each other. But as soon as one car falls slightly behind, and in the case AJ there, just suddenly gains gaining that extra tenth of input down towards turn number 1, that extra mile an hour, and it just makes such a notable difference. And that's why when they do spin away, if they're this close on the final lap, it really is going to come down to who picks when to attack for the win. It's going to be so tight between the two of them. But as we do leave them be for a brief moment, well, meanwhile, we do come back to Dickinson for a lonely 5th place at the moment. The best part of 16.5 seconds behind Garlic Dog, but closing on him quite quickly. But the problem is right now that he pitted on lap number 5 after that damage picked up. So does he have another pit stop to do? And we believe the answer is yes. As meanwhile, Bobnova is also in, and we suspected as much. He would have to come in for one more pit stop. Now, here's the 605 driver here, going to have just a quick splash and dash as there's more work to be done to the car. I suspect it will be a quick splash and dash of fuel, given how long he was in the pits the first time round as he comes on through. SimplySteve, meanwhile, now that he has pitted on lap 13, well, he's going to carry on surely. Although credit where it's due to SimplySteve, his pit stop 16.6 seconds stationary, so he definitely put some fuel in the car the first time round. Has actually been fuel saving to get himself to this point. And Bobnova with the splash and dash, a 10-second stop, and he makes his way on out. It's very interesting to see the variety of pit stop lengths we are seeing between drivers who were involved in the incidents earlier on, and even those who have not been involved in the incident, how much fuel saving they're doing. And I think the problem is, of course, a lot of drivers, because they don't have drivers to work with, that's why they're perhaps not able to save the fuel. As meanwhile, Bobnova's now going to have SimplySteve right behind him. Well, there's coincidental timing. And well, that's worked out very nicely for both drivers here. Now, this may enable them to get a bit closer. Not necessarily to Knotavin, but if they can put aside their differences for the remainder of the race until the final 5 minutes, they could gain some ground. Who will they be gaining on? Well, it would be an attempt to gain on Dickinson, who has yet to take what we believe is his main pit stop. And also Garlic Dog in theory. Pancakes and Urko, they're back together as well, as they play 9th and 10th. Pancakes ahead of Urko at the moment, that you can see on your screen. But these two together, and that last lap from Urko, a 2-minute 12.78. There's definitely some advantage in working with another driver. As Urko, they're getting very close to the back of Pancakes, so much so. In fact, I think they actually caught him out a little bit. He had to throw the car slightly wide with some understeer. We had to invoke some understeer in the car in order to make sure he didn't tap the rear of the SimCity Racing driver. But here they go, in towards the left-hander of turn number 6, and as they do, well, the American driver right now staying glued to the back in the 33, and will cut in as much as possible. Bit of an interesting cut there. He's got to be careful about doing that, as Urko. If you keep 2 wheels to the right of the yellow line as it becomes a prominent yellow line, you're okay initially, but if he cuts that yellow line with all 4 wheels, he will be subject to an extended off-track penalty, because that is essentially the escape line. You're not allowed to go below the yellow line when it comes to battling in race conditions in what is sports car racing here at Daytona. And, well, he's got to be careful there, because it's modelled in iRacing, whereby you go below that line, you suddenly do lose a lot of time. Unless you're recovering the car, and then understanding iRacing does normally give you a lot of leeway for that. But if you're trying to fight and you make an overtake down there, it does definitely raise some eyebrows with the automated system, and most likely with the stewards as well, because all the battling needs to happen above the yellow line on the oval banking. As Urko builds up the speed here. Well, here he goes. We can see to ride aboard the gyro, which you can see right now on the gyro camera because of the way the car is inclined versus the camera, and it all levels out. And as he does so here, picking up that side draft. Now, the best part of 126 miles an hour, peaking in 5th gear as he roars his way on through. And right now, Urko not wanting to go to 6th gear whatsoever. He does not want to lose all the acceleration. The car wants to keep the revs as high as possible. It's a 6-speed gearbox. We only use 5th gear. Well, meanwhile, Pancakes comes back at him, and Pancakes going defensive there. Well, these two are locking horns for a battle for 9th place. They don't want to work together, it would seem. Well, his Pancakes is making it clear he doesn't have plans to work with his rival. And SimplySteve and Bobnova, meanwhile, swapping back and forth. SimplySteve still the holder of the fastest lap of this race, and he is currently setting the fastest laps of anybody since the pit stop. A 2-minute 12.61 that one. Albeit he has now swapped place with Bobnova, so expect Bobnova to have his own quick lap very shortly. Back to niCKaLaToR and AJ we go. These two still yet to pit, your leaders, but Cat Daddy does come in as he nails it on the pit entry there. And, well, now the big question is, where does he come out in relation to this man, Knotavin, as he makes his way on through. Now, Knotavin, we look to the blimp camera. He's making his way through the bus-stop chicane. Meanwhile, Cat Daddy, we can see there almost to his pit stall. He's right at the end of the pit lane, so therefore he's only got a short way to go before he's back off the limiter. Back to Knotavin we come, and as he makes his way on through the Goodyear blimp right now, following him on around, and well, the number 28 driver here, keeping it nice and compact on the oval bank in the turn number 12. And, well, Cat Daddy still being serviced. That pit stop now, the best part of 14, 15, 16 seconds complete. We look to his car sitting stationary in the pit stall. Knotavin coming along. It's going to be close between the two of them. I get the feeling Knotavin may have done this. He may have jumped Cat Daddy as Cat Daddy leaves his pit stall now. But you'll see Knotavin goes blitzing on through there on the main road. And as he does so, well, Cat Daddy right now has seen his chance of third place completely swiped away from him as we understand it. Cat Daddy comes out the pit lane, but that gap is going to be the best part of what will be at least 7 seconds, if my reckoning is correct. And Knotavin already into the horseshoe hairpin, and Cat Daddy just about to make his way into the braking zone for it. There he is. Oh, that is 6.5 seconds. That is a swing of, well, I think that's 9 seconds, the swing between Knotavin and Cat Daddy. And Cat Daddy's pit stop, 26.8 seconds stationary. Well, I think Cat Daddy there definitely burning the wick with regards to the fuel tank, unless Notavin's underfueled and was hoping to find somebody to work with. Well, if so, could we see him come to a bit of a rears with fuel later in the race? We'll have to wait and find out. Otherwise, Knotavin has absolutely blitzed his way into effective third place based on strategy as we understand it. Bobnova and SimplySteve, they right now are still the best part of 26 seconds behind Cat Daddy. So I think Cat Daddy's safe from these two. So where does that put Garlic Dog and Dickinson in the equation? Well, we would say that Dickinson is not going to be ahead of Garlic Dog because of where he is currently, and both have yet to pit. But we would wonder whether Garlic Dog potentially then would come up behind Cat Daddy. But if so, 26 seconds to Bobnova, and the gap from Garlic Dog to Cat Daddy before the pit stop was getting towards 10 seconds. Garlic Dog should be safe from these two. Dickinson, meanwhile, will most likely come out near them. Now, will he come out ahead or behind? It's going to be close, I think. So that's what we'll wait to find out. We've still got a few pit stops to come. niCKaLaToR still with AJ, these two back and forth, but the nature of their back and forth has changed now quite considerably, where niCKaLaToR typically leading where he was previously chasing, and AJ doing the vice versa. And well, we're almost towards the end of 2/3 this race. 21 minutes left on the clock by the time they get to the infield section's completion this time, and not a pit stop out of the two as of yet. But as we do wait to see which way this will go. And AJ right now absolutely glued to the back of niCKaLaToR. It's definitely been a very interesting finale in this Crown Jewel race in the DC's 44 Ever Never washed at Daytona, round number 6 of season 13 of the Just Two Idiots Championship Series. Brought to you on iRacing. In the fact, of course, we had that 10-car pack that became a 6-car pack with the instant on lap number 3. And then we had the subsequent instant a couple of laps later, which meant that the top 6 split into a leading pair. Understandably, it happens. It happens to the best of our drivers. But right now, since then, as drivers have formed into pairs, these partnerships proven ever critical. SimplySteve being allowed through from Bobnova there. And Bobnova sets what is a 13.40. SimplySteve a 12.997. So the 2-minute 12s and low 2:13s are still there as the headlights start to come on. And well, we're definitely heading towards what will be sunset into nighttime conditions here. I think we will be completing this race under sunset. And well, as we can see, all the headlights of the cars coming on. Well, SimplySteve and Bobnova trying to work together. 17 seconds behind Pancakes and Urko. Well, here comes Urko up the inside. The Pancakes runs very wide into turn 1. I think understeering quite wide onto the marbles, and that caused him to go even further out wide. And Urko gets ahead there. So a change of places between the two. But Pancakes has not been dropped, and that's the main theme for the SimCity Racing driver. The man who started on what was meant to be pole, but became 8th place for the top 8 inversion for the Crown Jewel race, with the heat race unfortunately not occurring, and therefore we kept the Crown Jewel inversion, if you will, but we said instead of the sprint race results, we took it from qualifying. Well, right now, Pancakes 9, what was meant to be a bit of a golden day today, we've picked up those 2 points, and he takes the final pole position of the season, so it can't be all dismay for him. As niCKaLaToR and AJ, here they are. Run off the corner again, and niCKaLaToR right now head down, carrying on. AJ with him as they make the way in towards the horseshoe hairpin. Garlic Dog into the pit lane. So this is while the 3 pit stops outstanding, or while the 4 pit stops outstanding. So of course Dickinson needs to do another one. And as soon as we say that, Dickinson comes into the pit lane. Well, how about that? You couldn't script that. And once the SimCity Racing drive comes on down, so does Garlic Dog. So Knotavin should take 3rd place back now by quite a considerable margin here as he marches on. Indeed, he is really putting some laps together at the moment. He is the night racing driver. And, well, this man is not going anywhere by means slow, I can tell you that. In clear air right now, setting high 213s. That's the best he's going to get out of the Mazda MX-5 car. And we do wonder how much fuel he's still got left to take. But as they make his way around, Cat Daddy also comes on through a further 6 seconds behind, but has actually been closing on Knotavin, so I think Knotavin is having to save some fuel. GarlicDog leaves the pit lane, and as he does, who else comes out behind him? Well, Dickinson's there. Bobnova, meanwhile, still making the man down. So in the end, Dickinson nowhere near Bobnova and SimplySteve. Far from it. Well clear of them instead. And well, Bobnova and SimplySteve, I think, will still try to work together. But now they'll know the gap they've got to try and bring down to Dickinson is going to be the best part of 10 seconds. So that, not ideal, but at the rate they're going, it's not impossible. And we're on lap number 19 at the moment with 18 minutes to go. We've had confirmation that based on the lap pace that our drivers are showing so far, we are going to have 27 laps. And well, as they go on to their 19th tour, Urko and Pancakes right now, this is going to be an absolute thriller for 9th place here. They're playing this one out there, having a good time out there, to be fair, Urko and Pancakes, and enjoying constantly swapping back and forth. But I think both drivers, they've got different attitudes. I think Urko is trying to be a little bit more collaborative. I think Pancakes, meanwhile, is a little bit more eager to hold on to that 9th place. But meanwhile, we have a split between our leaders. niCKaLaToR comes in. AJ stays out. Well, I never thought that. I thought we would have seen them both coming together, given the way this race has gone and the fact they've been giving each other as good as they've given. And as they make the way on through, AJ right now, can he find some magic here? Can he do some one-lap magic on what most likely be his in-lap, whereas niCKaLaTOR is going to respond on his out-lap here? Well, they'll both be safe from Knotavin for the time being, but we did not expect that. As meanwhile, GarlicDog and Dickinson has caught up to GarlicDog very quickly on this out-lap, and we're suddenly going to make the move here looking around the outside. So GarlicDog's not had a happy lap whatsoever. In fact, he has been the best part of what has been a second slow in all sectors over the course of this lap, and Dickinson has brought that gap down, sweeps around the outside and through the bus stop chicane, and Dickinson now up into 5th place on the road and on strategy. So Dickinson now into the top 5. Next target is Cat Daddy, but that is an 18-second gap to haul. I don't think that's going to be easy for him. niCKaLaToR leaves the pit lane with a 22.25 second stop, so a reasonable stop there. There has been some fuel saving done most likely in the back and forth between himself and AJ. Knotavin, meanwhile, his pace has hit a bit of a brick wall by comparison, and I think the reason for that is because of the fact he's having to save some fuel after taking a much shorter pit stop by the tune of what would have been about 4 to 5 seconds compared to the amount of fuel expected. I think Knotavin is having to balance fuel saving here as well as pushing on. I think his hope was he would find somebody to work with after his pit stop. It hasn't worked out. So Knotavin is therefore limited by the fuel tank of the car rather than the pace he has behind the wheel. Going a bit further back, SimplySteve and Bobnova, they swap back again. And Pancakes and Urko have swapped themselves back again as well, off camera. And in fact, here they are. Pancakes going high around the outside of Urko. Urko, the Bobnova Motorsport driver here, looking to the outside, swinging back to the inside. And Pancakes just holds the middle of the road there under braking. That becomes the outside. And a very smooth line through turn 1. Perfect racing line there from Pancakes, but Urko gets the better run off the corner and says, I want a piece of that. Will he be able to make that happen? He's going to try it, is Urko, in towards the horseshoe hairpin, but Pancakes comes across and just about keeps it together there. But I see the car sliding a little bit there, and I think tyres now starting to pinch. Now, they are on the set of tyres they started the race on. Nobody has changed tyres as far as we are aware, and we know these tyres can go 40 minutes, but they will feel a bit sketchy, particularly on a warm track. And right now, I think the way our drivers have been so aggressive in some of these braking zones, particularly for Pancakes, we wouldn't be surprised if those rear tyres in particular are now starting to squeal a little bit. But we go back to the front of the field because AJ into the pits for his one only pit stop. niCKaLaToR making his way for the turn 12 oval banking at the moment with what is 15 minutes on the final lap to go. We're into the final quarter right now. Where do we go from here? Because AJ is now leaving the pit lane. In fact, that is a very short pit stop there from AJ. 16.2 seconds stationary to niCKaLaTOR's 22.2. When we know niCKaLaToR was pushing hard, but if AJ's been saving that much fuel, that's impressive. That is beyond SimplySteve's pit stop. But remember, we must caveat SimplySteve's pit stop with the fact he did pit at the start race due to damage and likely took on some fuel. AJ has had the shortest pit stop of everybody who's on a one-stop race here today by the best part of 5 seconds to Knotavin. That is sensational. So AJ right now comes out 7 seconds clear of niCKaLaToR as they go into the closing stage of this race. Now, has AJ opted to underfuel the car on the basis that he will fuel save as well in this final stint? He'll do quite a bit of lifting and coasting, but by buying himself all the space on circuit right now, he is safe from having to deal with the number 5 driver. Or is it a bit of a strategic blunder? Can niCKaLaToR right now close that gap down? I suspect niCKaLaToR, out of the two of them, has got the fuel that he can use a bit more aggressively by comparison, but we will have to see. As meanwhile, we see another edition of the battle between Pancakes and Urko here make its way onto its 21st tour of the circuit, and the two absolutely even on lap time at this point. And I think these two right now have just decided we're not going any further up the order, so we may as well fight, we may as well have some fun as we head into the night. And well, Pancakes right now finding Urko on his inside, but these two absolute stars, to be fair, and showing every lap how you can go back and forth, very respectful racing, and well, we absolutely love to see it. But the big question then, what exactly does this mean with regards to the championship standings right now as we head closer and closer towards the finish? Well, if we talk about what is the drive of, or drivers in terms of their current positions and the Drivers' Championship, therefore, what we can tell you is starting with the fact that our leader is AJ. Well, he's not in the hunt for the championship crown or indeed for the top 6 in the championship. So think less about him and perhaps think a bit more about niCKaLaToR right now, the man who runs in second, and also the fact we do have Knotavin in first. Well, Knotavin leading the way. Well, understandably, this is very much looking as though Knotavin is going to be taking home that championship crown. Given he's third at the moment and leads the way in the championship by a stellar margin, if things were to finish as they currently stand, you would be seeing Knotavin bring on home will be 45 points from today, and that would firmly put him on 220 points. It would make him untouchable. So Knotavin looking very safe, whereas when niCKaLaToR being in that second place at the moment, and then we consider that we do have Beaver currently running in, well, Beaver not on the grid here, so a non-start for him, so no points coming his way whatsoever for what would be Beaver, so that would leave him on 130 points given how far his season has come so far. And then we do have Dickinson make his way out there in 5th place at the moment. Well, the question mark would be where they all sit, and the answer to that question would be that right now, and also factoring that SimplySteve is running in 8th place, as I'm just trying to micromanage a spreadsheet simultaneously, and well, you would see niCKaLaToR be your runner-up by the best part of 9 points to Bobnova at the moment, who would take third. So it would be Knotavin, niCKaLaToR and Bobnova in the Drivers' Championship, and you would see 4th place by a single point go to Dickinson versus SimplySteve. So there's still some work for SimplySteve to potentially do, as Urko and Pancakes go side by side here, all the way to the line. He's gone to lap 22, and well, Pancakes creeps a little bit ahead, but then as Urko falls slightly behind, will he get the side toe here right into the braking zone? He will, and we're just going to try and go all the way around to a much wider line, can afford to brake later. Too wide they come through here. Great battle in between them, and that sun, well, very quickly going away there, of course, as they roll the way up towards the horseshoe hairpin. When his battle is not going away, the floodlights right now, very restricted, of course, for the night conditions. And Urko back on the inside there. Lovely return move from Urko. And that is going to enable him to move ahead. But Pancakes is not out of it yet. And we'll do keep in mind, of course, the sun takes 8 minutes. The sunlight, I should say, takes 8 minutes to get from the sun to our planet Earth, and that's why you've suddenly seen that transition from sunset to what is night just occur just like that. And whilst the drivers continue to roll on through, well, meanwhile, we've got a bit of a freeway fight on our hands here because Garlic has been reeled back in by SimplySteve and Bobnova. So this was one of the battles we expected would perhaps come towards the end. And with 10 minutes to go, it is here. And they've been gaining on Garlic at a rate of 2.5 seconds a lap, the pair behind. And SimplySteve and Bobnova are going to sweep the way on bars there. And indeed, Garlic going to low line. And I don't think Garlic's got the steam in the car. Whereas SimplySteve and Bobnova, they've got places to be. And they've got a battle to enjoy. And that's why they're throwing everything at this right now. And indeed, it could be absolutely back and forth between them. But that question of who will be 4th and who will be 5th between Dickinson and SimplySteve, well, suddenly that changes complexion should SimplySteve take home 6th place. If he takes home at 7th place, then it would be a tie between SimplySteve and Dickinson based on where they currently are. And so it'll be very close between them all the way to the very end. And then in the case of a tie, it would go to result count back. And I think the two have been very equal in results all season long, so it will be very marginal between them. But as we continue to watch SimplySteve and Bobnova together, well, they've still got a few more laps in them, and Dickinson is 7.5 seconds up the road. Could we potentially see Dickinson be caught here? Because he is being caught up to at a second a lap currently by SimplySteve and Bobnova. I think we need an extra lap if we were going to see that happen. So I think Dickinson is going to be safe, only just. But he's definitely going to be sweating a little bit here, seeing the fact that he's got two big names closing up to him bit by bit. Right now, I think Dickinson won't be feeling as though he can take his foot off the gas. As for the Teams Championship, Based on how things currently stand, what you would see as a result of the provisional results, the basis at the moment, is that you would see SimCity Racing take the crown by a single point as it currently stands over Long Life Motorsport. That's how close it is. And, well, SimCity Racing have right now got to hold on to their positions. They can't afford any mistakes. Ideally, they need pancakes to creep ahead of Urco to make this happen. Well, we'll have to see if that's the way it's going to go. As right now, Urco does seem to be stapling himself a bit more comfortably to that 9th place. But as we head towards the very final moments of this race, we take a look back at how SimplySteve and Bobnova blitz their way past Garlic Dog. Now, this really was just simply with the overspeed here from the draft. SimplySteve coming through quickly, and Bobnova coming through behind as well. But remember, for a bit further back, but he had the double toe, and that overspeed very quickly coming alive there for Bobnova. And Garlic Dog not really offering any resistance, just simply letting it go. And I think Garlic Dog just not having the pace in the car to stay with the two, so deciding to play it safe, and instead deciding, you know what, let's secure some points and try and guarantee playing racing cars will be part of the top 3 in the championship, rather than do anything too crazy or dangerous. But as we do come back into your live racing, well, right now, SimplySteve and Bobnova battling back and forth. But remember, there's a lot on the line here for SimplySteve in particular, in the pursuit of 4th place in the championship and hold on to his position. So that's why he's definitely going to be getting his elbows out now versus Bobnova, if he knows that it's all on the line for 4th place, versus Dickinson, who he wants to catch up to, but I don't think he's going to have the time. I think he realises he hasn't got the time. Now, speaking of a time check here for AJ, he is being called at a 2nd a lap by niCKaLaToR. So I think our theory that AJ has intentionally underfueled the car to give himself track position, and that he feels as though he's a slightly quicker driver to niCKaLaToR, I think that is running true, albeit remember, that's a quicker driver when they're both in clear air and they both have the ability to attack the circuit without worrying about the fuel tank. Flip the coin over, niCKaLaToR, he's got plenty more fuel that he can use, whereas AJ does not. So niCKaLaToR right now is giving it everything. AJ is taking it very easily and conservatively on the fuel tank, and niCKaLaToR that last lap, we definitely took a second out of him. We can keep doing this. He will be there on the final lap. It will be close. However, is AJ potentially trying to nurse his fuel tank, where, by the way, he loses time now, but perhaps in the final 2 to 3 laps, because we are going 27 laps here based on mental mathematics and what we confirm with race control. Could we see AJ potentially in the last couple of laps have enough fuel to go all in? And if so, that could work out for him. Oh, that hasn't worked out there for Garlic Dog, who's had a bit of a spin coming out of turn number 4 at the horseshoe hairpin. Well, his car's gone around. We'll get a replay of that very shortly to explain what's happened. In fact, I think we can get a replay now, ladies and gentlemen, because that's gone wrong for the second of our playing race cars drivers. So this was Garlic Dog making his way into the hairpin, and as he did so, did the rear of the car let go? The answer is yes, it did. Went fully on around, and unfortunately almost desecrating the Michelin Man in the process. But thankfully, going for the 180 pirouette, turn it into a 360, and back on the road he went as we return to your live racing. And as we do come back, well, what we can see here is that right now Garlic Dog and back on the road, but now 10 seconds behind SimplySteve, but 15 ahead of Urco, who has now fully dropped pancakes. So he has made that move happen, and he has made it stick. And well, in terms of how he made that move happen, his final move, I think we can take a quick look back at that. And here we go. This was back on lap 22. And, well, this was the side-by-side battle between the two of them, coming through what's the chicane of turns 2 and 3, and in towards the horseshoe hairpin. At this point, Urco on the inside, and, well, did not let it go afterwards. Got the better run out the corner, but Pancakes was with him still for a bit. But I think then the subsequent remainder of the lap is where Urco really turned up the wick, and Pancakes just not able to stay with him as we do make our way back to your live racing. And as we do come on back, well, still 6 minutes left on the clock, and AJ right now still trying to maintain this lead, maintain that gap as best as possible. 4.3 seconds, but his sector times really do tell a story right now, and that is he is still having to nurse the fuel tank, whereas niCKaLaToR is far from it. He's absolutely storming with regards to laps at the moment. And as they cross the line this time, AJ 2:14.168, niCKaLaToR a 2:13.763. So this time it's 4 tenths gained by niCKaLaToR I think AJ now is realising he's almost got the fuel to go full attack for the last couple of laps, so he can start to turn things up a bit and just keep that gap safe. And the danger zone, of course, is 2 seconds. If niCKaLaToR gets within 2 seconds, he starts to get a distant tow. If he gets within a second, he will be locked into a fight with AJ to the very end. So AJ nursing out with 3 laps to go as night descends here in the US state of Florida. And our American triple header right now really lying on what is margins with regards to the way it could all end. And keep in mind for AJ, this would be his first win of the season, and it would be his return to the podium for his 3rd podium of the season, where he did, of course, take what was the 2 podiums in our season opener at Alton Park, albeit in the sprint. It was a 4th place that was promoted to a 3rd place finish after post-race stewarding, and he did take the 3rd place in the feature as well there. But he's yet to be on the podium since then, and he's had quite a limited set of appearances this season as Pancakes into the pits. And well, that may explain why he's been dropped by Urko. I wonder if Pancakes has had a bit of a fuel limitation as he makes his way on down. And sadly for the SimCity Racing driver, this will be a race that right now, well, based on how it stands, he would still see the team bring on home the championship crown by a single point over Bobnova. But right now the 481 driver here and coming into the pits at the moment, parking up, and well, that is going to be to put in the final bit of fuel he needs to get to the finish line. There he goes, and Pancakes needs to get back out there because SimCity Racing right now, they have got a team's crown on the line. But Bobnova Motorsports, Urko and niCKaLaToR, they still are believing in one thing and one thing only, and that is that they may still be able to steal this away should any more results swing their way. But it's all going to come down to the finest and slenderest of margins now between them. As we understand it, it is a point that could swing it all. But meanwhile, we come back to Bobnova as he makes his way on down the back section. And there's SimplySteve behind. SimplySteve wants to get through. Bump draft there between the 2 of them. The Hamkin not chasing down Dickinson, to be fair. But I think SimplySteve, as much as he wants to chase down the man he wants to beat to 4th in the championship, the problem is he's going to run out of time. And with that, there'll be a fight for 6th rather than a fight for 5th place at this rate, as they've certainly dropped Garlic Dog now, but the best part of 13 seconds. And well, Garlic Dog now having a bit of a lonely run to 8th place. But Knotavin sets a personal best at 2:13.148 off camera. Here is the man on camera, and right now the defending champion, well, definitely a 3rd place here, which would seal the deal for him to become champion for this season. Well, the big question will be, in the coming season 14, is there any way of beating Knotavin? Because he will be back-to-back champion in 2 very different disciplines of cars. Indeed, LMP2 is all about using the downforce and maximising the use of a V8 engine, whereas here in these Mazda MX-5 Cup cars, it's all about the draft and also being very technical and maintaining corner speed in a 4-cylinder 2-litre engine with 180 horsepower. Only the 3rd or so of the power we saw in the LMP2 machine. But SimplySteve makes one through. Ooh, Bobnova's had a bit of an off there. Coming out of turns 1, 2 and 3. So Bobnova getting it wrong, and SimplySteve suddenly jumping his way back into 6th place. And well, in doing that, that would be enough to make sure he is guaranteed a 4th in the championship versus Dickinson. So can he now make a bit of a break? As we take a bit of a break in time to take a look back at what exactly happened to Bobnova. Now, this was coming through the opening corner. Bobnova was defending at the time. Tight line in. Got on the power early there, but understeered out wide. And in the end, the front right tyre not offering him any as much turning force as it used to, or turning grip, and had to cut his way through the CrowdStrike build there. And well, hopefully CrowdStrike's cybersecurity defense is not as porous as we did see their board be there. And well, Bobnova definitely making a bit of a ham sandwich out the opening corner, but thankfully not ended in disaster as we come back to your live racing. As we do coming back, well, mistake there for Bobnova, but he's now on the back of SimplySteve, but 2 minutes to go. And right now, we're on our penultimate lap for our leaders. AJ still managing that gap at 3.4 seconds currently, at least, versus niCKaLaToR. But niCKaLaToR last time gained 4 attempts. What's it going to be this time he gains? I think it's a lot more this time, to be fair. And AJ right now just trying to manage this race as best as he can all the way to the finish. niCKaLaToR a little bit further back, still with him or thereabouts as they make the way onwards. But niCKaLaToR right now knowing that he's got to hurry and scurry. But even if he takes second, he will be your runner-up in the championship based on provisional calculations. Of course, we will bring you the provisional championship standings after results in today's broadcast. They will be provisional, subject to any stewards' inquiries, of which there may be an inquiry or two regarding the early instance of this race. But as we head on to the final lap, the white flag is out, and AJ leads a 2:14.831 to a 2:14.0 for niCKaLaToR. That's 8 tenths. But right now, AJ, he can afford to back off at this point. If he needs to save some fuel, he can do it on this final lap. If he needs to sip the fuel, it could work out. Meanwhile, the big battle on circuit, outside of the question of first place, it's the battle for 6th. Will it be SimplySteve or will it be Bobnova here? Remember, if SimplySteve holds on to this, he will be 4th in the championship. If he loses it, it will be a tie-break with Dickinson for 4th place, and we'd have to double-check through the records as to who's going to take it. But here they go then, towards the time line. Bobnova going high, but this will be to bleed some speed rather than gain it. He'll be getting himself set up for the final lap to do it, rather than on this one. Perhaps also saving a little bit of fuel. And indeed, Bobnova right now, they may all be starting to run critical on the fuel tank. You never want to put any more fuel than you need to finish the race. But right now, SimplySteve going a bit wide there at turn number 1. Gets it together. But is this to open a door for Bobnova? Is this intention to try and help Bobnova get ahead? And the idea being that SimplySteve doesn't want to be leading coming out of the bus stop chicane. He wants to be the pursuer. And Bobnova on the outside line there does not really try to fight it too hard. I think both drivers here are almost being a bit apologetic to each other at this point, trying to say, no, after you, sir. No, after you, sir. And nobody wants to lead. As you can see, SimplySteve, they're literally hooking it to the grass almost coming in towards turn number 5. I think SimplySteve's trying to give a message to Bobnova, which is, I want you to lead this. I don't want to be leading right now. And Bobnova's saying to him, no, Steve, I want you to lead right now. I think both drivers here really being patient with each other at this point. This is the race that nobody wants to lead until right to the checkered flag. And so Bobnova can save the fuel. SimplySteve can take his time with this one as they make their way towards turn number 7. Meanwhile, back to the front, AJ niCKaLaToR. Gap has been almost halved now. It's down to 2 seconds as they make the way out of the chicane. But as AJ pounds his way onwards at this point, well, right now, it is literally an overbank between him and his first win of the season. It'll be the final win of the season as well, as he pounds his way on through. niCKaLaToR, 2 seconds behind, is closing little by little, but it's not going to be enough here, surely now, with only 200 metres for AJ. This is going to be a win that's been crafted on firm foundations from the start of the race, and AJ, as he runs out of fuel coming to line, he will take victory at Daytona ahead of niCKaLaToR, who takes the run-out spot. But behind them by 5 seconds, taking third, he will successfully defend his crown. Here's your provisional Season 13 champion. It is Knotavin. Cadani comes on through shortly, and as he does so, it's been a huge drive for the Playing Race Cars drive, no doubt about it. Not quite on the podium, but he'll be happy with that 4th place, given he was expected to miss this round, but he was able to make it. And then Dickinson is going to come on through here for 5th place, a further 10 seconds behind. But what about SimplySteve versus Bobnova? Well, here they go to line, and right now Bobnova's on the high line. He's high, and with it, he's ahead. But meanwhile, SimplySteve going low, and it's going to be, is it SimplySteve? Is it Bobnova? It's going to be Bobnova who just steals it away there, and it forces SimplySteve to go to a tie-break with Dickinson for 4th place. Garnet Dog, meanwhile, will come home in 8th place in due course as he makes his way towards the finish. And what a solid drive there from the 199 drive, no doubt about it. Just didn't have the pace in the end to stay with the top 6, but he will take 8th, 9 seconds ahead of Urko, who in the end, despite a small mistake, and with the fact that Pancakes is going to the pits for a splash and dash of fuel, he is guaranteed 9th place of Long Life Motorsport. And Pancakes, well, in the end, this car needs to make it to the finish. If he does so, we believe this will be provision enough to see SimCity Racing take the crown by a single point over Long Life Motorsport. So right now, the team will literally be biting their nails and just hoping the 481 driver makes it to the finish. That's all he's got to do at this point. And as he makes his way closer, 300 metres becomes 200, then 100, then 50 metres, then it's 40, 30, 20, 10 metres, and as the car runs out of fuel, well, does it run out of fuel? It does. I think he puts the brakes on there. In fact, Pancakes comes on through, keeps us all guessing with hearts and mouths, but Pancakes takes 10th place, and that makes SimCity Racing your provisional team champions as we understand it, ladies and gentlemen. Goodness me, well, what an end to there, and he's kept us guessing and wondering. As SimplySteve calls on down to the pit lane, well, we are going to just take a quick look back at what was that epic ending between Bobnova and SimplySteve. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, for a brief trip back in time as they were fighting, and we bring you that replay, of course. So this was SimplySteve versus Bobnova, and SimplySteve had the better run initially on the open half lap. Of course, neither driver wanted to be leading, so therefore SimplySteve was trying to back off, but Bobnova kept saying to him, nope, you can have the lead as far as I'm concerned in this fight for 6th place. So they made the way through the bus stop chicane, and as they did, well, SimplySteve there just taking his natural race on. At this point, he's got to commit now. He's got to think to himself, okay, what do I do to try and be the leader at the end? Well, one thing you can do is you put the car in the middle of the road and you make Bobnova make a choice. But in the end, Bobnova decided to even call him out on that and went higher, so SimplySteve went lower, and at this point, Bobnova now really at the mercy of the high banking and went higher there, and that's by design. He's bleeding some speed initially to stop himself from getting ahead of SimplySteve, then came back down, and at this point, it's literally the side toe that makes the difference here, and Bobnova timing this perfectly with the draft. SimplySteve at this point low, starts to pick up a bit of a side draft here, but it is too late by the time they get to the finish line, and Bobnova taking that by a 10th in 6th place, and Bobnova there really showing his oval racing credentials and really mastering when to come down to make sure he sealed the deal for that 6th place, and SimplySteve having to settle for 7th. But what a way to run it, as we now run ourselves back to what is your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, to bring you those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, because SimplySteve calls them down, and as he does so, well, let's look to the scenic view, and here are the results subject to any stewards' inquiries for the final time this season. And as we do bring the results up on screen for our one and only race here for our season finale, whilst we did have a clerical error, to be fair, it's been 60 minutes of absolute brilliant action in our crown jewel feature race here in round number 6 of season 13 of the MX-5 edition of the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, brought to you in iRacing, and this being the DC's 44 ever Never Washed at Daytona, sponsored by J2ICS. A huge thank you to our sponsor once again, of course, and he was having incredible names this season. What a name to end the season on. And whether Lewis Hamilton or not is washed, well, I'll tell you one thing, AJ definitely not washed when it came to a stellar performance here at Daytona, taking that win, his only win of the season and his 3rd podium. Indeed, he started the season with 2 podiums and he ends the season on a podium. Perfect bookending from the privateer, taking that win by 1.478 seconds. niCKaLaToR was with AJ every step of the way, but it was a difference in strategy between the two, when niCKaLaToR decided to go all in on the fuel and take the fuel to get in and be aggressive. AJ, we must saved as much fuel as possible in the opening stint and underfueled the car by design to give himself breathing room and not have to worry about the slipstream stakes. Knotavin, meanwhile, behind the Bong Life Motorsport driver, the niCKaLaToR driver, finishing in 3rd place, more than enough to seal the deal and enable him to defend his crown and become our provisional Season 13 Drivers' Champion. Cat Daddy, 4th place there for playing race cars, a very valuable result there in that position, the first outside of the top 5, and he was 14 seconds behind the podium, but it turned 10 seconds or so ahead of Dickinson for SimCity Racing, who did well to recover to 5th place, given how the race started. Bobnova and SimplySteve found themselves entwined towards the end in a brilliant battle on strategy and on the road, with the Team What Team driver able to just make his way past SimplySteve at the finish line by not even a 10th there. In fact, it was the best part of 43 thousandths of a second, and the Speed Squad try home to settle for 7th. Garlic Dog, 8th there for playing race cars. And a great effort from him, as always. Unfortunately, didn't quite have the pace to stay with Bobnova and SimplySteve in the closing stages. And, well, we did see a Garlic Dog in the end make sure he picked up the points alongside his teammate Cat Daddy. And it was a further, what was 9 seconds back to Urko for Bong Life Motorsport, who after his brilliant back and forth with Pancakes, was able to take that 9th place and make sure with it Bong Life Motorsport had a good end to their season. Pancakes, meanwhile, SimCity Racing, perhaps the most critical result of them all, because that's the result that makes SimCity Racing your provisional team's champions, as we've done the maths. Gabay, sadly, not able to join the grid today due to a technical issue of the car that was found in practice, carried into qualifying, and they couldn't get it fixed. And so the 22 will be classified as a non-finisher, the privateer, but good to see him turn up at Daytona and watch the racing from the sidelines, regardless of how difficult his day has been. But what a race, ladies and gentlemen. Whilst we did have those incidents on laps 3 and 4, to be fair, those incidents have not taken away from an absolutely brilliant score of racing to complete our season. But as we do now, and just get our points loaded, what we are going to do is show you the provisional standings after a grand total of 6 rounds, with a drop score thrown into the mix as well. So therefore, these are going to be accurate, subject, of course, to any stewards' inquiries. And just bear with us a brief moment whilst we do get those in place. Well, the Daytona International Speedway, the world home of motorsport, has definitely not disappointed today as far as the Just 2 Idiots Championship is concerned, and they've had an absolutely superb race, no doubt about it, of our drivers. And well, I get the feeling this is only going to tee us up for even more incredible racing as we do make our way into season 14. But those points now about to pop up on your screen. And in fact, we can start off by showing you the Drivers' Championship standings for Season 13 after 6 of 6 rounds of racing provisionally with a drop score. And as they do come up on screen, there is the proof. Knotavin, your winner for this championship season for iRacing and successful defender of his crown from Season 12 from LMP2s to MX-5s. And, well, completely on the different spectrums of racing machinery, but the iRacing driver completely on top of proceedings by the best part of 29 points ahead of niCKaLaToR, and a job exceptionally well done. niCKaLaToR in the end being able to hold on for that second place finish right at the end for Bobnova Motorsport ahead of Team's Bobnova, and well, credit where it's due to both drivers, to be fair. But niCKaLaToR's success really stemming from the fact that he's been the more consistent finisher over the course of the season, whilst Bobnova's had the better results perhaps when it's come to individual results, including of course what has been a win, and that win coming in the sprint race at Tsukuba, plus also multiple podiums. Well, niCKaLaToR's been no stranger to podiums as well, taking a grand total of what's been 4 podiums, but both drivers today really seeing the difference being the consistency and niCKaLaToR making it count. Dickinson taking 4th place there in the number 1 car for SimplySteve, and well, we can confirm in the battle between him and SimplySteve, what does it come down to in the end? Well, neither driver picked up a win this season, and the count back instead is going to be on podium finishes. Now, in terms of second place podiums, we're just double checking this, bear with us, because we do want to actually get the information you need. SimplySteve taking only a single second place. Meanwhile, Dickinson, by comparison, taking home what was none other than 2 second place finishes, and that is why Dickinson is your 4th place finisher in this championship, and SimplySteve missing out on the runner-up spots, with neither driver taking a win, and if it come down to second place count back, and Dickinson having 2 second places to SimplySteve's 1. But an epic ending between the two of them, both on 167 points. Minor Speed Squad driver, Cat Daddy for playing race cars, another top 10 finish, but also a 6th place finish, and this season, perhaps not rising to the David versus Goliath heights of Season 12 in the LMP2s, but still doing very well in the 69 machine, and also a different style of car, really bringing out some strengths in other drivers as well, but we can be certain he'll be chasing a top 5 finish next season. Pancakes taking 7th there for SimCity Racing, 141 points, 11 ahead of Beaver, who wasn't on the grid today, otherwise we would have expected him perhaps to still be in the hunt for the top 5, but the privateer falling to 8th, and a point behind him, Garlic Dog for playing race cars, who in turn was 7 points ahead of today's race winner, AJ, the privateer, who did sneak his way into the top 10 right at the end. Emi Dust has fallen to 11th, head of Urko, with Corn Dog Gang and Biker Pilot completing a top 15, and Biker Pilot versus Paperbag. In the end, Biker Pilot taking it for 3.8 racing by Countback versus Paperbag on results, with Omega, Captain CK, Mark Darnell and Gabay completing a top 20, and outside the top 20 in the final provisional Drivers' Championship standings, Tomofi, Tagish, and 0 points there for Sneezy Jr. As for the Teams Championship, and well, as we can see, as we predicted, based on our maths, a single point has seen SimCity Racing take the crown ahead of Bong Life Motorsport. And, well, 308 to 307 points and a further 5 behind playing race cars. The tightest we have seen it for some time in the Teams Championship, and it all coming down to individual results today. Well, what a Teams Championship we've had. We had 5 teams that could have taken it today, but only one can take the crown home. SimCity Racer done so. Congratulations to them. And, well, congratulations as well to our runner-ups on that podium of Bong Life and also playing race cars. Speed Squad, in the end, just able to make sure that iRacing could not take them away from 4th place by the best part of 30 points there. And Speed Squad, in the end, taking 4th, iRacing 5th, and then it was a further best part there of 71 points to Team What Team in 6th, who finished well clear at 3.8 racing, with Bad Math Simsports and Abicular being tied at the very end on 93 points, 8th and 9th place respectively. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, those are the provisional championship standings after 6 of 6 rounds, subject to any stewards' inquiries. And with that, we do have to say farewell to Daytona for today, and it is time for us to now wrap up. Thank you very much. Oh, goodness me. Let's try that again. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Even I'm tongue-tied, and I'm going to say that's because I've got tears coming out my eyes, as we do have to bring the curtain down on Season 13. And if you have enjoyed tuning in today, or if you enjoyed tuning in throughout the entirety of the season of Season 13 of the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, the MX-5 edition of this series brought to you on iRacing. And perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about the series, or perhaps how you can get on the grid for Season 14 when it comes about later this year. Well, for all that and more, we definitely recommend you go to our official website at www.j2ics.com. That website available on screen. As you can see now, a no more simpler compendium of all the information you need to go racing with us. Indeed, if you want to know about the history of the community, how it was formed, or indeed how all the previous seasons have gone, the Hall of Famers and everything in between, do go to our website. You will not be disappointed. But of course, if you want to be a bit of a community member straight away, if you want to jump straight in at the deep end and get to know everyone and get on the grid as quick as possible, we do recommend you join our official Discord community, and that is available using the invite link on screen as displayed. Indeed, you won't be disappointed there. Full of banter, full of friendly faces, and also full of serious drivers when it comes to race day. But with that as well, we'd like to take a big moment to say a big thank you to the Just Two Idiots Championship Administration for what is enabling us to be able to have an incredible season of racing. They've run things so well. Even though we did have the technical issues from today prevented us from the sprint race, they did incredibly well to get the racing going regardless, and it has been absolutely faultless, and that will carry us through nicely into Season 14. Speaking of which, well, we shall be back for Season 14, and our provisional start date for our next season is Wednesday, the 16th of September 2026. Now, there may be some changes to that start date, as I've been informed, ladies and gentlemen, so do not take it as gospel, but definitely put that date in your diary. And if you want to be on the grid at the Just Two Idiots Championship Series, make sure you join the community before that date. A couple of weeks before, at least at the start of September at the latest, because you never know whether that date could change. But right now, at least, that is our working date for Season 14. The choice of car, the choice of circuits has yet to be decided, but I can promise you one thing: regardless of what car and machinery we take to the circuits, and regardless of what circuits we go racing at, it will be a thriller. Season 12 delivered in LMP2s. Season 13 this season has absolutely been magnificent in MX-5s, and what will be in Season 14, we will have to see. But with that, sadly, we do have to bring the curtain down on Season 13. It has been an absolute blast. A huge congratulations once again to our provisional champions in the Drivers' Championship of Knotavin and in the Teams' Championship of SimCity Racing. And well, I'd like to say personally a huge thank you once again to the Just Two Idiots Championship Series for giving me the pleasure to bring you all the racing action as if it were live on a weekly basis from all 6 rounds. And well, I look forward to the prospect of coming back for Season 14. I think things are in the works. And well, ladies and gentlemen, we definitely look forward to coming back to all the racing action with regards to Season 14, presented as if it were live. But until then, we have been the Just Two Idiots Championship Series Season 13. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh. You've been tuning in to a Paul Walsh production. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.